now. And the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to give you a kind of a rundown of what all you have capabilities of in this class. So the first thing that I want everybody to notice is there's, at least if you're using the program version and not the web-based browser, in the top right, you're going to see a little chat bubble, kind of looks like your iMessage bubble. This is where you can text. Yeah, my webcam is also disabled, so you won't be able to see me either. I'll activate mine on the points when I need to, but for the most part, I'm going to be sharing the screen. But anyway, so if you need to text, you can do it. I see people are carrying on good conversation, so that's fine. A lot of you have found that. Other than that, it's pretty not really that much stuff that y'all have to know. The text is capable of texting people individually or to the whole classroom. If you have any questions as we're going, by all means, pop it in there. I will answer it as I see it. If somebody else in the class, if y'all see something, then that you can answer, then you can go ahead and answer that. Like, for example, are we supposed to be seeing anything except a tiny gray screen? Not yet. Well, I don't even have to type. I'll just say it. Not yet. I haven't shared the screen yet, so everything is going to be gray. Once I share the first screen, which will be our website, because I want to go over a couple things on there, then you'll start to see things. So moving on to that, let me go ahead and pull this up. All right, give me a second. There we go. All right, so now you guys should see, as soon as it uploads, now you should see our website, and this is your online training platform. Is everybody seeing that? You can just type it in here. If one person sees it, everybody should be able to.
Yes.
Good? Okay. All right, so let me mute everybody again. Good. All right. So this screen is going to be your landing page for everything that we do in the class. Remember that you got here by clicking on courses and then coming down to the online training and then online classroom. That's how we get to this screen. Anytime you want to get into the live lecture, if you're going to be here when we're actually doing it, if you mouse over Start Learning, at the very top is EMT class. That's you guys. We do have other classes going on right now. So if you pop into the wrong classroom and you hear somebody else talking and it doesn't seem to match up with what you're learning, you're probably in the wrong class. If you miss a class, or if you, let's say you guys, some of you are on duty, so if you have to leave halfway through it, or you just flat out can't get on, or you got, date night or something and you don't want to be in the class, that's perfectly fine. You have 5 days to watch all of our recordings, or 5 days from any lecture to watch that recording, and we keep them all in the recorded classes. The only thing that I will say is, obviously, can't immediately upload it. So if it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday night and class just ended an hour ago, the class won't be recorded and uploaded yet. It'll be recorded, but there's some steps to me uploading it. So usually it's the next day. Sometimes it may be the next afternoon or something like that, but it will be uploaded and you'll be able to find it. All the classes that are y'all's will be labeled with your class number. It'll say B920. So EMT Basic, and 920 is the month and year that your class starts. Any other ones you're more than welcome to watch. We do put everything up here for public consumption. However, only your classes actually matter to you for this particular thing. Below that is the Canvas link. So this is where an easy way for you to get to Canvas, instead of trying to remember 2 different websites, you can just click this link. That will bring you up your Canvas so that you guys can take your tests, your module tests. We do have some files that you'll be able to download. We have all of your checklists, like your individual skills, your trauma and medical checklist, everything is there. And we're going to be going over those, especially when we get to module 2, I believe, which is your patient assessment. On the right is your attendance form. This is after every lecture, you guys are going to fill this out. You put your first and last name, email. If it's live, like all you guys that are in here with me right now, you'll leave it on live. If somebody is watching this video as a recording, you'll just click the recorded button instead. Put the current date, put the original lecture date. This will be the same for anybody that's on the live, obviously, but if you're watching a recording, the two dates may be different. The PIN code will give this out to you at the end of the class. It will get into the recording. So anybody watching the recording will actually hear me give the PIN and everything. That way they can record their attendance as well. And then the signature you can write in. So sign your name. Doesn't have to be pretty. Just needs to be something showing me that this wasn't done by a bot. And then hit submit form. That is for this class. That's all you have to know about our website, and that actually gives you access to everything. So you don't have to get loose and go to meetings website or lost in the weeds of trying to log in and all that stuff. I know that was confusing. Everything is automatic from the website. The next thing I want to show you guys, I need everybody to go to nremt.org because this is a National Registry class. You guys will be taking the National Registry at the end of this course. So make an account here. All right, just create an account. You won't have to do anything with it until the end of the class, but I wouldn't wait until then to create your account. So you don't have to do it right now. You can do it over the next couple of days. That's fine. And just get to where you're in their system so that when it comes time for us to send off your paperwork, they can attach it to your profile and you'll be able to know when you can test, or when you're at least able to schedule your test. When you do get your score, they're going to put it on the website and you'll actually see it there faster than you get the email or the letter. So if you're chomping at the bit, hopefully you aren't unfortunate enough to take your test on a Friday afternoon. You can usually get your results on the same day. Which website are you talking about, Kayla? What website? Are you talking about where we were with the attendance? Okay, that was the ARES website. So aresmedsolutions.com. That's our company webpage. A lot of you have gone there to hit me up on the chat option. Sorry if I missed those when you send them. And just in general, as we've been talking on Facebook, a lot of people have hit it, but that's where you go to access everything. So you don't have to go straight to the Canvas website or anything like that. The website for National Registry is nremt.org. So National Registry of EMTs.org. It's just the initials. Louisiana residents, for any of you guys that are wanting to become state EMTs, this is all you guys out of state, out of Louisiana. You don't have to do this. Louisiana has their own portal. If any of you guys are EMRs already, or if you may have already dealt with this in general, this web page is for you. This is and all I do, because I can't never remember this URL. I just go to Google and I type in LAB EMS, so Lab EMS, Louisiana Bureau of EMS, and it'll pull up. It's one of the top results. Create an account here. Again, this is just Louisiana, guys. Create your account here, and we will start an application for you to get your state registry. That way, in addition to your national, you also get this. You guys from other states, let's see, I know we have Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi in here. Y'all don't necessarily have this, but it's just done differently. So for you, you're going to do all the stuff that we ever refer to with National Registry. You'll take your National Registry test at the end, and we will submit reciprocity to your states so that you can get your actual state license if you need it. Mississippi, every state's a little different, and that's where the beast of this comes in. This is how Louisiana does it. Mississippi requires you to be employed before you get your state. Other states require you to get your state before you get employed. It's just, it's different. So if it looks like I'm talking a different language, or if I'm saying something that doesn't really apply to you, it's probably because I'm referring to somebody from a different state. But otherwise, there's that. I don't have, again, there's not a portal for other states that I know of. If there is, if I come across it, I'll sit down and deal with that. But we still do all the snail mail stuff for other states. Those are the big websites you need to know. Again, once you get this one done, the nremt.org, you can pretty much forget about it for a while. Just don't forget your password. That's when it gets to be kind of a headache, is at the end. But the one you're going to go to every day, or at least every day that you deal with class, will be our website, aresmedsolutions.com. Any questions on any of that so far? Should be good. It's pretty
I
straightforward.
have a question when we get to the boot camp.
Okay, or you have a question that you're going to ask when we get to boot camp, or do you just have a boot camp question?
A boot camp information question.
What do you like to know?
Um, I'm in Missouri at the moment,
Okay.
but I plan on being back to Louisiana, hopefully before a boot camp. If
Okay.
I'm not, what do I do?
You may have to travel. We don't currently have a boot camp in Missouri, although we are working on one in St. Louis. But I can't promise you a boot camp location until it's completely stood up. The worst case scenario that I can imagine is that if you are still in Missouri, wherever in Missouri you might be, we're working on, and we should have it up here soon. Little Rock is going to probably be the closest one to you once we get it up. I'm looking at having that one probably in the next couple of weeks. So that's plenty of time before the boot camps because they don't happen until January, mid-January.
Oh,
So,
okay. I'll be home by then. I'll
okay.
be home by January. So, okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Worst case scenario, yeah, I know. I got some other boot camp locations I'm going to mention here in a second. That'll make a lot of you happy. Um, so worst case scenario is that we move you to another class's boot camp. I actually have some people from my last class that are going to be joining you guys when you do go to your boot camps. Um, it happens. So you have 2 years from the end of this course to take the registry. We obviously don't require, we don't recommend you wait that long because you're going to forget a lot of the little things, and then that's going to make your test a lot harder. But if anything happens, and for whatever reason you guys can't make a boot camp when we have it scheduled, we have plenty of time to put you in the next class's boot camp. Our next EMT class starts in March, and they all run about the same amount of time. So you're looking at next fall would be the next round of boot camps after your classes, which is still well within the 2 year range. So we can work with people. Like I said, I got people from the last class coming to this one because life happened and they just couldn't make their boot camp. Let's see. Which one do you pick on my screen? It says pick one EMS professional, program director, training direct officer. Okay. That's going to be, is this for the NREMT website? Of those, you're going to pick EMS professional. Your training officer is usually going to be your boss. Your med director is a doctor. And we'll go over actually some of that stuff tonight as to what those titles mean. But yeah, for you guys having to pick one, EMS professional is basically going to be you as an EMT. All right, let me unshare this and we'll get started. Actually, that was pretty much all the housekeeping, so we can go ahead and get into the chapters. All right, so let's see. I need to share.
I ordered my book today, and it won't be here till Thursday. Am I going to live until then?
Uh, well, I mean, I hope. You, as far as that goes, you'll be fine. So these first couple chapters you're going to see. I hope I don't put anybody to sleep with these. These are easy chapters. This is the kind of stuff that says like this is what EMT stands for. So a lot of this is very basic. That being said, if it is new to you, don't worry about that. It's the class isn't that much further advanced. We just always start here to make sure everybody has an understanding. But yeah, no, if you don't have a book for a couple of days, even up to a couple of weeks, typically you're okay. Um, give me a second. Thanks for asking. We don't have yet in Mississippi. Oh, you're talking about the okay, but yeah, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine for a while. So Oh yeah, you're down at Pascagoula. Yeah, your books haven't come in yet. I'm working on that. Because of the way your department purchased the books. So hopefully you get those soon. All right. Anyway, so let's get started. We get past these competencies. This is all stuff that you just every lecture's got it. We don't have to talk about it. All right. So for anybody wondering, because we do have a lot of stuff that you're going to get, we're going to set you up. Now that I've got a solid roster, we're going to get you guys set up with complimentary access to Master Your Medics, which is a fantastic studying resource, not just for the content, but also for the test. They actually take our curriculum and they curate little lectures that they do, little short blurbs that fit with what we're going to go over the next night. So you have your textbook, which is your primary source of information. The lectures, we try to be thorough, but there's too much. In these first couple chapters, you can get by with just a lecture, but when we start getting past or getting to anatomy and beyond, there's no way. We'd spend 6 hours lecturing out the entire chapter. But there are some assets you're going to have in this class that you don't normally get. Master Your Medics is a fantastic one, and you always have access to the teachers. Even you guys that are catching the recordings, you can always text me, email me. I've got other instructors I'll bring in. We're in your Facebook group. So if you ask a question and we don't know the answer, or I'm sorry, if your student, your other classmates don't know the answer, we'll step in and answer it. If we don't know it, we will get that answer and get back to you. So some acronyms you're going to hear a lot: EMT and EMS. EMS is a blanket term that incorporates all the levels of EMS. So EMT, EMR, advanced EMT, and paramedic. Those are your responder levels of EMS. But it's more than that. You also have your med director. Your ERs are considered, EDs are considered EMS. You've got the dispatchers. Police can be EMS. In fact, we got police in this class. If you're providing any kind of emergency care, you fall into this system. So, congratulations. Welcome to the club. Chapter 1 discusses the system's key components. So this is going to be pretty quick. EMS is a system. Is just basically a team of healthcare professionals. Again, this can be somebody that's just trained in CPR, first aid, all the way up to your critical care, flight paramedic, that kind of thing. So somebody gets in a car accident, like what you see in this picture. The very first thing to activate EMS is the person who calls 911, or if the car itself does it. Some cars are smart enough to do that now. That starts it. Dispatcher gets the information and sends it to you. Now, you guys that actually work in EMS already or in fire departments, we know that sometimes what the dispatchers tell us is absolutely nothing to do with what we see when we get there. I know I'm sometimes the worst about it. I get a little irked with dispatch when they give me something that's just completely off the wall, at least from what reality really is. But you got to think about it. They're sitting at a computer. They're giving you secondhand, sometimes third-hand information, and it's not always accurate because the person who called them may not have a clue what they're looking at. So car wrecks are easy to see, fires are easy to see, but hazmat situations, if they're driving down the road and they see a bunch of people laying down in the parking lot, they have no idea if it's an active shooter or if it's a hazmat cloud or whatever. So we're going to harp heavily on scene safety, BSI, that kind of stuff, because you guys are the responders that are going into some kind of an emergency to get somebody out of it. All right. They got hurt. Whatever it was that hurt them may still be there. And we don't want you to become one of the victims. So, but this whole response system goes everywhere goes from the person who calls 911 all the way to the ER staff that you hand your patient off to if you're a transport unit or an ambulance if you're not. System as a whole does emergency care and transport, and it's governed by state laws. So this is a national registry class, right? It's a national curriculum that almost every state recognizes. However, the National Registry cannot tell you that you can work in Louisiana or Mississippi. You still have to get a state license. Don't let that scare you. This is the class that gets you there. It's just that the registry has no authority. So your states accept National Registry curriculum. They'll accept the class. When you complete the class, your state will determine that you can work. So you're going to just have to fill out for a state certification, and a lot of times that's just a piece of paper, so it's not bad. The actual work is going to already be done. After you complete this course, you are eligible to take either the National Registry exam, which all of you will be, and then some states use this curriculum as well to do a state certification exam. Everybody that's in this class, the states that you hail from, don't require you to take a state certification exam if you've passed the National Registry. So you don't have to take both. New York residents, for example, they do. They got to take the National Registry, and then they have to prove to the state through their own test that they can work in the state. And it's crazy because it's all the same stuff. So after you pass the exam, you'll have your National Registry card, and then you can apply for your state licensure. Most states have 4 training and licensure levels: EMR, EMT, AEMT, and paramedics. EMR is used to be, if you guys have been around the block for a while, you've probably heard first responder. That's what EMR is. EMT is what you're taking right now. Advanced EMT is kind of like you're still closer to EMT than you are paramedic, but you're basically an EMT with some paramedic skills. So an AEMT can set an IV, set an IO. They do allow AEMTs to give a little bit more medication, but their clinical knowledge is still pretty limited. They're just more hands-on. And then paramedic is basically the paraguide outside of the hospital. They are they're more clinical, so they have a lot more drugs they know. They have a lot more drugs they can give. They're experts with an EKG. You guys that are nurses in here, anytime a paramedic comes in, hopefully they don't belittle you. I know sometimes some of them get kind of mean, especially when they're snooty like that. But everybody's got their strengths. Paramedics are very, very, very well versed in 12 lead EKGs, STEMIs, that kind of stuff. So if you're a nurse that works in the cath lab, you can probably work circles around the paramedic. But if you're a nurse pretty much anywhere else in the system, unless you were a paramedic, the paramedic's probably going to have you on that kind of stuff. So just some food for thought. And EMR is very basic training. You guys, we're going to learn things in here that if you're already in EMR, you've already heard this. So, but as an EMT, you're going to take it a little step further. You guys that have not been EMRs, don't sweat it. It's not that much that you've missed, and we do cover it all. So, but basically all they do is their actual medical knowledge isn't very far beyond first aid. What they're good at is assessing a situation. So when we start going over your medical and trauma assessment, the EMRs already know that. It's no different. What's different is the interventions you can provide within it. Same thing if you go to advanced and paramedic. The actual assessments are all the same. It's just what are you allowed to do with what you see in front of you. So EMRs provide care before the ambulance arrives. It's very basic life support. They may assist in the ambulance, but again, it's also going to be very basic life support. So you're going to find EMRs doing CPR in the back, maybe some basic bleeding control, that kind of stuff. But you're not going to see them really giving any meds. You're not going to see them. You really definitely won't see them doing IVs and anything of that sort. EMTs are they're trained to the EMR level and beyond. You guys are kind of the master of BLS. So you are AEDs, airway adjuncts. EMTs have gotten to be a little bit more useful when it comes to airways than they used to be. Used to be it was either an OPA or an NPA. And those of you who haven't ever experienced what those are, you will. But that was it. Like there were no supraglottic airways at the time. You weren't sticking anything down anybody's throats. So, and that's a good thing. It's the field has progressed. It's still pretty young. EMS as a whole, I think, started around the 60s, maybe a little bit before that, the way that we see it. So EMT has come a long way. In fact, I think it was like 6 years ago, they really revamped the whole thing. It used to be called EMT Basic. They scratched Basic off and just said EMT. And that's when they gave us a lot of new toys to play with. So now you get supraglottic airways like the King Airway, the combi tube. You're going to learn all about those at the boot camp and how to put them in. You get to assist patients with some medications, but you're very limited on what you can give yourself. Again, BLS, a good way to look at it is anything that doesn't break the skin, anything non-invasive. So as long as you don't have to stick them with a needle outside of a glucose check, you probably can do it. As long as you're not putting something past their vocal cords, you can usually put it in. So all the airways, you have airways that go past the cords, you have airways that go up to the cords. The ones that go up to the cords, you can use as an EMT. The ones that go past the cords, like ET tubes, those are going to be the paramedics that use that. AEMTs, like I said, you guys are EMTs with some extra knowledge. All of you in this class are going to be basics. You have the ability to go from here to either advanced EMT or paramedic. This class is the prerequisite. You don't have to go advanced and then paramedic unless you just want to. So from this class, you basically are at a fork in the road. You can either go the advanced route and just be, I don't want to say just be an advanced EMT, where you can set the IV, set IOs, drop airways, stuff like that. But when it comes to medicine, you still kind of hand everything off to the paramedic. Or you can go be a paramedic. The only difference is the schooling is a lot harder and it's a lot longer. And advanced EMT class after this one takes the exact same amount of time. The paramedic class, so you're going to be just be in your lectures for about a year, and then you have to do a 2-week boot camp to get all the skills through that we have to do, and it doesn't move slow. Those are some fast-paced skills. And then after that, you have to do your ambulance time, and the ER time is required for a paramedic. It's actually required for an advanced EMT as well. You guys don't need it for EMT basic. We can put all your hours on an ambulance, and that's what we plan to do. Just because you're going to see more. An EMT in the ER as a student, you guys get a lot of experience holding the walls up, and I don't want to waste your time. So we're going to put you on an ambulance when we get to that part. Paramedic has extensive ALS training. So yeah, again, we talked about BLS being basic. ALS is advanced. They can do endotracheal intubation. That's a tube going past or going through the vocal cords deeper into the airway. They have a lot more pharmacology knowledge, like an entire book worth, as opposed to a handful for you guys. Cardiac monitoring, like I said, they're very, very well versed and skilled at that. And then other advanced assessment and treatment skills, depending on where they're at. Your EMT course includes 4 learning activities. You have reading assignments. I would like for you guys to read before you come to class. So if we're doing chapter 1 and 2 tonight, I know that kind of puts you off behind the curve because we're just getting started. But these chapters are easy. Try to get to where you're reading the chapter before we get to the lecture so that the lectures make more sense. And you'll also come in, if you have any questions, you'll already know them coming into the lecture rather than getting the lecture and then finding out you don't understand something. Step-by-step demonstrations. When we get to the boot camp, it's going to be a crawl, walk, run. We'll start off with your individual skills and we'll show you how to do them. Then we're going to let you do them with our help. Then we're going to let you do them without our help. Then we're going to put them in scenarios where you're having to run the whole call and figure out what you need to do and go from there. So, but it is a learning experience. It's not an evaluation. And by the time you get there, you'll be ready for it. So it'll be a lot of fun. Boot camps are fun because they're just all day, doing different things in the field. Summary skill sheets and case presentations and scenarios as we go, not in this lecture, obviously, but when we start getting to things like airway management, you're going to see those. EMTs are the backbone of the EMS system in the United States, mainly because a lot of calls are BLS. Most of your trauma is going to be BLS because we can't fix trauma in the field. Surgery fixes trauma. So you as an EMT, your trauma knowledge and a paramedic's trauma knowledge are pretty much the same. The real difference is in your medical side. EMTs provide emergency care to the sick and injured, hence the name of your book. All right, so some of the subjects we're going to discuss are scene size up, patient assessment, treatment, packaging, and EMS as a career. It's pretty much the entire summary of your class. The next module will be scene size up and patient assessment. We're basically going to be teaching you how to assess a scene, make sure that you're not walking into something that's going to hurt you too. And if it is dangerous, because somebody's got to go in there, usually the fire department. We teach you what to watch out for, and we'll talk about some of your PPE that you use. So some of you guys that aren't firefighters or anywhere near fire and EMS at the moment, you may not understand some of the equipment we talk about, but that's okay. The stuff that you're going to see in the boot camp is what everybody will be dealing with. Not everybody gets turnout gear. So
Robert,
packaging. Sorry, go ahead.
I never had boot camp, so I'm a little nervous about that.
Okay.
When I did mine many years ago, we didn't have to do no boot camp.
No, traditional classes, all your skills are in the class. So you show up to lecture one night and then y'all play around with some stuff and you go home. and then you show up to another lecture and you play around with some stuff and you go home. Because this is online, we can't do that. So the boot camp.
Oh, okay. All right. Got you. I got you. I'm good then.
Yeah, oh yeah. The boot camp is nothing more than your skills that you did in the class. We just have to put them all together.
Okay. Got you. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Licensure requirements. Requirements differ from state to state. To actually be an NREMT, you don't have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. Your states may require it. To my knowledge, y'all's don't. But that being said, your employer may require it. So it's kind of a tough question to answer. We had some people asking if they could get through with a GED, which is perfectly fine. I had some people ask if they could get through without a GED. For the class, yes. For employment, I can't answer that. That's up to the ambulance or fire department, whoever you go to work for. Proof of immunizations, we are going to need those, but I didn't need them before the class. That's why I didn't really harp on it too much. The immunizations, just show me through the class. So you can send me a copy of your immunizations. That's fine. We really need it for your ride-alongs, so that when you get on the ambulance and you're dealing with real patients that might have real diseases, we know that you're immunized from certain things. Successful completion of a background check and drug screening. Again, mostly colleges look at that. I will say this, and some people have asked me, felonies can be a big derailment to getting your licensure. So I don't think anybody that's actually in the class has had that issue. The people that asked me kind of dropped off to the wayside. But if any of this stands out, if y'all are concerned about it, don't put it in the chat, please, because nobody needs to know your business. But reach out to me. Let me know. We'll work with it. We'll go through the registry policies, see what they say, and then we'll go from there. And then a valid driver's license. That's important because you as the EMT are typically going to be the one driving the ambulance. Again, though, you don't need a license to do the class. Typically, that's an employment requirement. Successful completion of a required course, that's what this is, and passing the certification exam, that's the national registry exam that you take at the end. Demonstration of mental and physical ability is necessary to perform the job. If you guys can't lift 100 pounds right now, that's perfectly fine. That's something, again, your employer may look at that. And with stretchers being the way they are now, you may not even have to do that. And then compliance with other state, local, and employer provisions. These are the things that everybody has to follow, every employer. Americans with Disabilities Act, you guys have probably seen that before. That's federal law that says nobody can fault you or fire you or something if you have some kind of impairment that doesn't hinder your ability to do the job. The employer should make as many reasonable accommodations as necessary to allow you to do your job. So, for example, well, no, that actually is a different one. I'll tell you what, we got 43 people in the class. Somebody give me an example of a ADA accommodation that you either in the police department, in the hospital, something like that.
I have epilepsy and it doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. So there's that. I was almost going to say that one, but I was afraid that I'd be wrong on it because it was kind of a stretch. If somebody, if you're, all right, type 1 diabetic, we'll go with that. Epilepsy, my only concern with that is the flashing lights. But if you're not set off by that, then that's perfectly fine. Type 1 diabetic, you have to take shots. So if you're a type 1 diabetic, they have to allow for you to take the time to do that or to eat. They can't tell you that you can't eat. They take your truck out of service for a little while or something. They can make accommodations for that. Title I of the ADA protects EMTs with disabilities who are seeking employment, and it may require modifying the work environment or how the job is performed. So that being said, you may just not be able to be on a truck, right? But that doesn't mean you can't work in the office. You can't work in a classroom and train. There's accommodations for pretty much all of that. The background checks, again, the National Registry, here's some things to note. The registry won't let you be active if you are a violent offender. There's a whole bunch of felonies that will disqualify somebody, and there's a few of them out there. There's actually a whole bunch of them out there that don't really disqualify you. Like, for example, you're a felon if you write a check for over $500 and it bounces. that's something that even though you've got that on your record, you could usually still be fine being an EMT. I think you have to let the registry know, but they don't really turn people away for that. If you are an EMT and you get a DUI, you're probably going to lose your EMT. That's, be careful about that. Keep that in mind when you guys go out drinking. And I like to drink with everybody too. Just make smart decisions on that, because that's a pretty hefty consequence if you ever get hemmed up. So history of EMS. Origins include volunteer ambulances in World War I, field care in World War II, and field medic and rapid helicopter evacuation in the Korean conflict. As you notice that this is mostly wars. So trying to take care of people with missing limbs, gunshot wounds, stabbings, you really saw it in the major wars. So that's where this kind of came about. And then we figured out, you know what, we could do this for people in car accidents too. So it started to come across. Now, hold on, if you just have to list it and file. Yeah. You just need to make sure that they know what's up. You don't want to get caught. It's kind of like a security clearance. If you keep it a secret and then you get found out, it's much worse than if you were to just be open and honest about it in the first place. It's pretty much how my parents raised us. But so, this started off on the battlefield, especially for trauma. And we figured out that we could start to do this more in the civilian world as well. Original EMS systems actually ran out of the funeral homes, and they carried you to the hospital in the hearse. So you actually got to ride in a hearse to the hospital. How do you get a book? There's 2 links, Kendra. I'll send them to you after the class. I think that Chegg ran out, from what I understand. So
Amazon has the books.
Amazon's got the books. We also have the ones from the publisher.
They have it for $93 at Amazon. That's where I got mine.
Can't beat that then. That's even better than the discount we got. All right, so yeah, check on Amazon, and if you can't find it, let me know. All right, so these are some important papers that were published over the years. It's really not important that you know this. Just kind of notice that if you look, things kind of started off in the 60s. So this is a very young career field. It's mostly done by private ambulances. It used to be that they were public services, kind of like the fire department, but they found out that was really expensive, so they stopped doing it. The DOT, instead of the hearses, now the DOT is in charge of EMS, because you guys operate mostly on the highway systems. So we're not using hearses anymore. Anybody watch Ghostbusters? The original,
Oh yeah.
like the cartoon, the original movies and everything. The Ecto 1 was a hearse ambulance. So it just came to mind. Anyway, so over the years, they started trying to put a standard to it. That's when the NREMT came about. So you had the DOT's national standards in the 70s, advanced levels of EMTs in the 80s, because they found out that it was great to have these people in the field, but they really couldn't do anything. It didn't matter. And then in the 90s, you had NIST's EMS agency or EMS agenda for the future. The levels of EMS that we talked about in the past, they have been revamped over the years. There's, like, for example, we used to have first responder. That changed. Then we used to have EMT intermediates that are now the advanced EMTs. Those changed twice. You have 2 different types of intermediates out there that are grandfathered into the system. You may hear people say that they're EMT-Is. There's 2 different standards for that. Now we have EMR, EMT, advanced EMT, paramedic, but it does change. It'll probably keep changing as well. So you have the federal level of training. That's National EMS Scope of Practice. You have your state level. So that's where the Department of EMS, Bureau of EMS, whoever. And then you have your local level, and that's your medical director. That could be somebody at your fire department or at your hospital. It's a doctor, usually an ER doc. They are the ones who the area that the hospital is in may reach out and say, we need a med director to oversee our EMS operations. And he will be the one to sign off on it, not just for active calls, but also for the schools. Like, we actually have our own med director that signs off on the curriculum, just to make sure that everything is being taken care of. You don't have to be an EMR or above to try to save a life. You know, there are large pushes for people to get BLS training. I don't know if, there's a buddy of mine that's in this class. I don't know if he's here tonight. I want to dig through 44 names to see if he's here, but he's a firefighter, and to say that CPR saves lives, we'll get to it when we get to the ref chapter. But he saved I think it was a first grader's life. I'm not sure what grade he was in, but his kid went into cardiac arrest. He was on duty. He got there and brought the kid back. So getting CPR out there to the community so that the teachers know how to do it, the average layperson, like a Walmart employee, they know how to do it. That's huge, because somebody might fall out on aisle 7, and you know, the cashier can run back there and start doing CPR before the fire department gets there, and that makes a huge difference in survivability. We've been pushing to get AEDs out to more people. They actually have programs out there for free AEDs for businesses as well as home use. If you have elderly people that are staying at home, it may not hurt for you to look into some of those things. I can, on our actual Facebook page, we post a lot of things that are important for the community and stuff like that. So if you're interested in probably getting AEDs out to your community, keep an eye on the page. Every time we see a new grant come up or a grant that gets renewed, we usually post about it, and we try to get AEDs out. So a lot of your law enforcement officers are going to be EMR trained. We almost had a whole department join the class, but they didn't. They decided not to do it at that particular moment. Just do this real quick. So keep in mind, guys, I don't always get to get back here and mute everybody. I do try to keep everybody muted so that we can keep the background noise out. But I got you guys for now. All right. EMRs initiate immediate care and assist EMTs on their arrival. Again, they're the ones that are going to be doing the scene size up. So if nothing else, an EMR can tell the EMTs what to expect when they get there. And then we have Good Samaritans. That's just, like I said, that's the Walmart employee. The Good Samaritan, we'll talk more about that in legal, in the chapter for legal and ethics. But the Good Samaritan will typically protect you when you're doing something to save somebody's life if you're not in an official role. Even as an EMT, sometimes you may find yourself trying to save a life under the protection of a Good Samaritan law. You're not excluded from that just because you're trained. In fact, the Good Samaritan law is meant for people to operate within their training. But like I said, we'll talk more about that in the right chapter. The EMT course requires about 150 hours. We will exceed that by the end of this course, but not by too terribly much. The EMT has knowledge and skills to provide basic emergency care. Again, you guys aren't going to be giving IVs and medicine, but you're going to be doing a lot of stuff that's preparatory for that. And there's a lot of calls out there that they don't need a paramedic. They just need you to go over there and give them some oxygen or help them take some Tylenol or aspirin, that kind of thing. Training adds knowledge and skills. You can get individual training for IV therapy, advanced airway adjuncts. So if you want to just do IVs, check with your state because it is state-based. Like Tennessee, for example, I believe has EMT IV, which means you're an EMT that's able to give IVs. So that's something that you can do, and not every state allows that, but it's kind of a crapshoot. You got to check with your state and see. Paramedics, this is the other end of the spectrum. Like I said, you're in a lecture for a long time. So over 1,000 to 1,300 hours just in the classroom. And then your internships are beyond that. We actually, it's pretty close to, I want to say it's 250 hours that I have to do as a paramedic, as you know, for a trainee. And the training, the reason it takes long is because you're training to cover everything. We're talking about like heavy cardiology, airway management, lots and lots of sicknesses and different medications that they can give. It just takes, it's a lot. There's a big jump between EMT and paramedic. There's actually a big jump between AEMT and paramedic. All right, so we already talked about this. This are your 14 components. We have public access. That's basically 911. People can call 911 if they need to. It's also access to things like AEDs. We have clinical care, medical direction. Medical direction is what gives you the authority to do everything that you do as an EMT. So whether you have, we'll talk about online and offline med control. Some things you can do just because you know how to do it. Some things you have to actually call the medical director and get permission every single time you want to do it. But regardless, it all comes from med direction. Even the stuff you do automatically is because it's written down and that says you can do it. So one med director may allow you to do something, another assistance med director may say no. So always, whenever you go to your job after you get through with this class, look at your protocols and figure out what you're allowed to do. Because we may teach you some things in this class that you are not allowed to do, but somebody in another state would be. So it's in the curriculum. Integration of health services and information systems. We have prevention, which is really big. And we've been dealing with prevention and fire service for a long time because, I mean, nobody wants their house to burn down. But it's getting bigger in EMS as well. We're finding that, especially when you start getting into areas of the country like the Northwest or even just the North Central, like the Dakotas, those really scarcely populated states, their EMS is so barren that they've long since passed the point of having to go fully volunteer because they couldn't pay for it. There's also a lot of cities out there where they just don't have EMS. If something happens to you, there's no 911. There's nothing there's nobody you can call. They're not going to come. They're not going to make it out there. Can everybody hear me? I see somebody is saying that they.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Hold on. No, I can't move my mouse. Anyway. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was still coming across. So anyway, communication systems, that's your dispatchers, your fire departments will also, all of you guys will have radio access. They're not as against cell phones as they used to be, which is good because it used to be they're like, oh my God, you can't pull out a cell phone on a call. But that's the easiest way to reach people because you can text the ER, you can text the doc, you can call whoever you need to call or whatever. Just be careful about like camera phones, right? We'll talk about HIPAA. Make sure that you're not taking pictures you shouldn't be taking, especially with your phone. We'll talk about most places have a shift phone that they give you. They leave it in the truck or whatever. And if you need to take pictures for whatever reason, use that phone because if it ever goes to court and they start pulling evidence, if you took the picture with your phone, guess whose phone they're going to take. So keep that in mind. And then you have your legislation and regulation.
And don't think that they won't take you to court because they sure will.
Oh, they will. You'll wind up on the stand at some point in your career. Doesn't mean you're the one on the hot seat, but they may pull you in to just get an idea of what happened. So we'll talk more about that as we go as well. The other systems, you have evaluation, system finance, public education, and education systems. So with this, evaluation is a continuous effort. Every few years, something new comes out. A good example of that would be activated charcoal. You guys as EMTs can give activated charcoal. We used to give it for years for poisoning and overdoses. However, we found out that the activated charcoal sucks. It doesn't really do its job, and it's a waste of time. So it's still in the curriculum. We're going to hit a point where we talk about activated charcoal and how to use it, but you're going to find when you go out to your system that nobody uses it. It's working its way out. The way that we do CPR, that's why we have to refresh every 2 years. Public education goes into the prevention and being proactive. So if we can stop people from getting sick and getting hurt in the first place, it makes less of a strain on the EMS system. All right, this is just the flow of a call. So incident recognition, there's a wreck, somebody sees it and calls 911, gets dispatched. First responders show up. A lot of times those are your fire departments because especially smaller fire departments, you'll find that they don't have EMTs or paramedics. They just run EMRs. They get there, provide BLS support. If it is something that needs more than them, then they'll call in the advanced life support, which is the paramedics. They decide how they want to transport the patient, be it by ground on an ambulance or a helicopter. Then they get to the hospital. At that point, EMS is done, and the hospital takes over, but the patient's care, the flow of care continues from there. So yeah, we talked about all of this, so we'll skip these slides. All right, so we'll talk about this a little bit. Med direction, like I said, that's a doctor. Usually it's a doctor at the main hospital in your area. It's an ER doc, and they're just carrying a phone. So keep that in mind. If you are, when we tell you like, all right, we need you to call med control for this intervention, don't call them for useless stuff. If it's something you know you can do, you don't have to call the med director. If it's something you do have to do, like I say, you're going to give nitros to a patient. We'll talk about that when we get to cardiology. You have to call med control to get their permission to do that every single time, because there are going to be times when you don't want to do that. You want that decision to be on the doc, not on you. But there's some information you have to get. So don't call the doc and ask permission until you have everything you need, because the minute he says, well, what's his blood pressure, and you don't have it, they're going to hang up on you. That kind of thing, probably with a few choice 4-letter words. Don't be afraid of them. Just make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. And again, that's where this training comes in. So you have standing orders and protocols, and you have online orders and protocols. Your standing orders are things that you're going to definitely do this every single time you come across this scenario. So they're in writing. The doc doesn't want you to call them every time you go to put oxygen on somebody. That's a standing order. So they describe the appropriate care, and they basically say, if O2 sats are below this, you're going to give oxygen every single time. Med control can be offline or online. Offline is your standing orders. Online is where you actually have to call the doctor on the phone usually, and get his permission right then and there. So, like for example, like I said with nitros, you'll get the patient's blood pressure. You'll figure out his medical history and everything. You'll get all the answers that the doctor's going to want to know before you call. That way, when you call the doc and he answers and he's standing in a busy ER going, why are you bothering me? This better be good. You can say, I've got a patient this age. He's got these symptoms, these meds, this history, this blood pressure. Can I give him nitros? And the doctor will be like, all right, cool. Yeah, give him 1 or up to 3 or whatever. And then he's going to hang up on you. Again, they're busy. They usually don't want to be the ones carrying the phone, but they get stuck with it. Your legislation and regulation mostly controls your training and who is allowed to be an EMT in their state. Again, not every state is going to accept National Registry. All of yours will. Even the states that don't really consider themselves National Registry do still kind of take this curriculum. My example is New York, because I live up here now. The military moved me up, and I just decided to stay. The state recognizes that I'm a National Registered EMT. But when I went to get my state EMT up here, I had to actually not just show them that my training was in our EMT and in date and everything. I also had to challenge their registry test. So some states will do that. Some states, if they consider themselves National Registry, they'll just, oh, you're in our EMT? Cool, here's your state license. Senior EMS official handles administrative tasks. Everybody's got a boss, and most of your EMS districts are going to have somebody that is strictly for this. Like, they don't get on a truck. They may or may not even have any EMS experience, but they're good office workers, and they can keep all the documents going. Your pre-hospital care is coordinated with the hospital care. Again, if you're going to be a transport EMT, say you work on an ambulance, one of the things you're going to notice a lot from your very first call when you do your ride-alongs is when you start to get close to the ER, the paramedic is going to call ahead and explain what's happening. That way the ER staff can get ready for the patient when they come in, and there's a smooth handoff. Pre-hospital care sometimes can be continued in the emergency department. Just because you walk in the doors doesn't mean your job's suddenly done. An example of that, one of my last paramedic partners that I worked with before I moved out of state from Mississippi, we showed up to an ER with a cardiac arrest patient. The room floods with nurses and techs, and now we are suddenly no longer the highest trained in the room. So we hand off, but we don't leave. We just step back, and we're there if they need us, and they needed us. The staff, the doctor came in and said, all right, let's push a round of epinephrine. The nurse working the crash cart where the meds were opened up the drawer, stared right at the epinephrine, closed the drawer, and then looked in another drawer. She didn't really know what she was looking for. And I'm not knocking nurses. This particular one just couldn't figure out which box was the epinephrine. So, we had to kind of step back in and take over. Sometimes that happens, and it's not the nurse's fault. Sometimes it's just training. Sometimes it's, I haven't looked in this drawer in a long time. What is epinephrine? That kind of thing. Anyway, sometimes we do have to keep going. Another example is you show up and everybody's busy. If every room is full, you can't get your patient off your stretcher. You're still providing care, even though you're standing in the ER. Integration ensures comprehensive continuity of care. So it actually works out that, you know, we're bringing the patient into the ER. We have that contact with the doctor for online med control, or if something happens and this is major pericardiocentesis, that kind of thing, where we need to do, or not we as EMTs, but the paramedic may need to do some kind of minor, you can look at it as like minor field surgery on somebody's heart. A lot of times that is done with a doc on the phone, that kind of thing. Because that's even a paramedic will pucker a little bit about that one. But it really helps the patient's outcome. And then EMS systems collaborate with hospitals to improve treatment for patients with heart attacks, trauma, and stroke. So all of your new CPR protocols that come out, and we actually are getting a whole new set next month, all that comes from studies, research that's done. They look at survival rates. They look at, all right, well, that didn't do anything. You know, everybody we gave activated charcoal to had no change. So why are we bothering with activated charcoal? That kind of thing. STEMIs are a big heart attack issue that hospital reports on. Those kind of things affect how we handle training for paramedics, training for EMTs, even down to training for the Walmart employee that knows CPR. All right. Mobile integrated healthcare is kind of becoming a new thing. You guys, I mean, I don't know. Does anybody have this in their areas? I know we don't have it here. Everybody seen this? No? Okay. So mobile integrated healthcare, it is new. It really hasn't taken off nationwide yet, but it's really, really a good thing. Basically, they're moving ERs into the EMS spectrum. So instead of just having an ambulance pick you up off the side of the street and then bring you into the ER, these systems are kind of attempting to bring the ER to you. So imagine having a type of ambulance that has a lot more capability at an advanced level. It could be a critical care transport ambulance with a nurse on board. With telemetry becoming more of a thing, you're going to see where like there's a screen in there and the doctor kind of pops on, and the doc, even though he's not in the ambulance, he can see everything going on in there and help run codes in the field instead of having to do everything at a basic level before you get to the hospital and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. If it's not in your area, it may be nice to start kind of putting that bug in people's ear to see about getting it out there. So mobile integrated healthcare created additional training levels for EMS providers, including community paramedicine. So paramedics receive advanced training beyond what they normally got in paramedic school. And again, that's where like critical care paramedic came around, and different like specialties for paramedics to do after they became a base level paramedic. All right, it is 7:17 for you guys. So we're going to take a pause here, take about a 10-minute break, be back at 7:30, and we will resume. All right, welcome back. For those of you that are back, we're going to continue this. See how far we get. All right, so for evaluating medical systems, the medical director is responsible for that. Again, that's not just for people on the ambulance, it's also for those of us like ourselves that we teach the classes. We have a med director that has to go in, look at our curriculum, compare it with. Oh, 1 second. So anyway, they have to go in, compare our curriculum with the national standards and everything, make sure that everything we're teaching is current, that we're meeting the minimum standards and hopefully exceeding, but that we are at least doing what we're supposed to be doing. And they sign off on it. They do the same thing for all of your protocols and all the different interventions that you're able to do, because they make those decisions. They know what all the things under the sun you can do as an EMT, and then they're the ones that go through and say, yeah, but not this. I don't want them to do this. And so they create your protocols. And they're supposed to go back every so often and revisit that. Every time a new person takes over as medical director with his own idea of what should be done outside the hospital, they'll go in and revamp that. And usually the reason why they don't allow you to just do everything is because technically you're you're operating under their license. So You know, if you go out there and you screw something up, like say they allow you to do pericardiocentesis as a paramedic, and you go out there and you kill somebody because of it. As long as you did what you were trained to do, you followed the rules. It falls on them. So a lot of them don't want to take that. They don't want to take that chance. But minimizing errors is the goal. So even though we can't always stop that, that's what we try to do. Errors can result from a few things, right? You have rules-based failures, knowledge-based failures, skills-based, or any combination of that. But we try to keep it as little as we can. The environment can be part of the reason for errors. So if you're doing something in the dark in a ditch at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's no real way to get lighting to you, or you're riding down a bumpy road in the back of an ambulance, those kind of things, they're a little bit beyond your control sometimes. So we do everything we can to kind of mitigate that. You yourself can help reduce an error. So, if you are starting to do something and you're not comfortable with it, maybe don't do it, at least at that particular moment. If you can stop, if it's bumps in the road that's causing you to have the problems, then stop the ambulance. If you go on to be a paramedic and you can't get an IV because you're bouncing around like a rubber ball, just have them have your driver stop the ambulance while you set the IV, and then you can keep on going. I haven't heard anything at all in about 30 minutes. Kayla, can you hold on? Kayla, can you hear me talking now? Okay. All right, give me a second to type this up for her. Can anybody else hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
I hear you.
I can.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, sweet. Making sure. All right, maybe
I'm good.
like this.
I hear you, but I'm lost.
I can hear you.
There we go. All right. Glad y'all can hear me. Who's lost? Who said they were lost? What can I kind of touch back on?
Just messing with you.
Oh,
I'm just sitting in on this class.
all right. Let me get back on it. All right. So for information systems are used to efficiently document the care that has been delivered. There's a bunch of different ones out there. Most everybody has gone to electronic just because it's much easier. You don't have to worry about bad handwriting or losing papers. But the issue then runs into some of you guys, for example, are way out in rural areas that you could probably save it on the computer, but you have no way of uploading it to their cloud storage or anything like that. And if you run your battery dies on the laptop before you upload it, or you type 90% of it and something happens and your computer crashes, which happens a lot, you lose all your stuff. So, tech makes it easy, but it does have its problems. But anyway, once you store it, especially electronically, a lot of us use infers to store things. Agencies that go through and do a lot of research and figure out what works and what doesn't, they will pull from that. It's much easier to get information from centrally located things. So, but some of the things that they'll pull from, average on-scene times, for example, how long did it take your ambulance to get there? What does that do? Well, if your average on-scene time is extended all the time, that might be justification for a new station. Need for educational session. There's been whoever just logged in, please make your mic. Me too. There we go. I got you. But anyway, national trends tend to be what causes new BLS standards. Educational sessions So there's departments all over the country that get in trouble because they don't take their training seriously. We see where sometimes it's a problem of a lot of errors happening in a system that should be something that's avoided just based on your level of training, right? How to do an IV without messing up the sterile field of putting in the needle, that kind of thing. So sometimes we may need to have better education in a system, or at least more education. They've pretty much designed the system to be refreshed every 2 years. They feel like that's about a good pace for that. In the future, who knows, they may change it. I know some states, like for the NAEMT, for example, does their refreshers every 3 years. So no, it's not always the same. It just depends on what they're feeling like is a good pace for how often new things come out. System finance. So finance systems vary depending on which organization is involved. Again, you guys get to put, your organizations may pick a certain system. And how you get paid also kind of depends on your organization, if you even get paid. There's volunteers out there, volunteer ambulances, combinations, fire departments, obviously the same way. Most of the country is volunteer. EMS agencies, volunteer is not that common, but you do see it, especially out in like New York. When you get out of the cities of New York, say like Buffalo or Rochester and all that, a lot of the rural areas are all volunteer. Even the helicopter service up here is volunteer. As an EMT, you may be asked to gather insurance information from patients for finance reasons. Just don't let it get in the way of your patient care. There's an ambulance company that I've interacted with as an ER tech, where they'll roll into the hospital with a patient that looks like he's about to die on their stretcher, and they haven't got an IV up, they haven't got an airway in, they don't have anything, but they got his health insurance information, that kind of thing. So priorities come into effect there. You can always get that information once you get to the hospital. I know that cops a lot of times will need information about a patient, so you can always just hand their driver's license to the cop, let them be writing everything down while you're doing patient care. You have to get that stuff, but it doesn't have to be the first thing you do. Get signatures on certain documents, such as HIPAA notifications, refusals, those kind of things. You want to make sure that they get it in writing. Everything gets documented. And if there's anything to do with the patient, like say if you show up to a scene, guy's got a broken leg, but he doesn't want you to take him to the hospital, he can say no. But you're going to want to get that refusal in writing, where it's a printed form, and you say, here, we don't have to take you, but you're going to have to sign this, basically saying that you waived us off. That way he can't come back and sue you later, or he can, but he may not win. Obtain written permission from patients to bill their health insurance company. Some people, even though they have health insurance, may not want you to bill them because it's going to raise their premiums. So keep that in mind. It doesn't hurt to just ask them, do you want us to put this on your health insurance? And if they say yes or no or whatever, you can get that signature later on. All right, education systems. So EMS instructors are licensed in most states. Me as your EMS instructor for this class, I'm licensed in 2 states. We have the Louisiana program that we're teaching by. I also have my EMS instructor through the Air Force. So we have to meet those credentialing requirements. Some states have different requirements. Mississippi wants you to be typically at the top of, or one level above what you're training at. So if I'm teaching an EMT class, Mississippi wants me to be at least an advanced EMT or better. Not every state has that. Louisiana doesn't. They want you to at least be the same, obviously. So if I'm just an EMR, I can only train EMRs, that kind of thing. So most EMS training programs must adhere to national standards established by 2 accrediting organizations. You have the Committee on Accreditation of Education Programs. It's a mouthful. So it's the Committee of AEMSP and the CAHEP. Is that on this slide? No, it is not. It's not even on the slide. This class, the EMR class and the Advanced EMT class, don't require accreditation. They require state authorization. So the accreditation classes are going to be for paramedic, which is what we're working on. That's why we don't have a paramedic program up yet. So, but that is backs the software or backs the program and basically says this class is to this standard We know that, we've looked at it, and you're good to go. That way, you as a consumer, when you look at a class, you look at our class, you look at any one of the other ones, you know, one of the questions we got a lot leading up to this was, is the class accredited or authorized? You know, so that is a way, that's a protective effort so that you don't get suckered into something that's not really going to give you a degree or a certification or something like that. All right, ALS level instructors and directors must hold a 4-year degree. ALS training is usually provided in a college, adult career center, or hospital setting. Depending on the state, sometimes you're going to have private education institutions that can do it, but if you come back to us for paramedic when we get that program up, we are accredited at that point. We're not accredited yet for paramedic, that's why it's not up there. But if you go to another program, if it's one that's well known, like there's NIMSA, for example, actually down in Louisiana, NIMSA is really well known. It's ran by Acadian. They're run through the community college systems and everything. They're all around Louisiana. So if it's something that's well known like that, obviously you can typically trust that they're going to have their accreditation in order. But if it's something that you've never heard of, some small company like ours, like you guys took a leap kind of when you came to us, and we showed you that we were able to show you rather that we were accredited. But a lot of times you don't really necessarily know that unless you look into it. So yes, we will be accredited for paramedic in the future. Our program is built, but until the accreditation is done, we refuse to try to do a class. So we're looking at possibly next fall. We expect the program to be accredited all the way. And then we'll be able to start doing paramedic classes. So we're hoping for fall. If it doesn't wind up being fall, it'll wind up being the spring. The reason being is because we want our paramedic program to be an associate's degree. And so we partnered with a college, North Shore Tech, down in Louisiana. But they're also going through their reaccreditation process. So we're kind of playing the waiting game while they get their ducks in a row. Then we can finish getting our ducks in a row. All right. So anyway, moving on. Prevention and public education. So this is big again because our EMS systems, they're not really well funded. The public sector gave up on trying to fund them years ago. Now you pretty much just have private ambulances and EMS in the fire departments, and that's almost all you see. And it's expensive. It's really expensive. If you've ever looked at a ambulance bill, if you're having to pay that bill, there are some people who would rather die of a heart attack in their recliner than go to the hospital if the ambulance is the only way, because it's really expensive. So we try to do, whoever, try to keep your mics off, people, unless we start talking there, because I'll try to get one at a time. Otherwise, we get the feedback monster. So anyway, emphasis on prevention helps from overloading the system. You know, if you think about when COVID first came up, they really weren't so concerned about everybody getting COVID and dying. That wasn't the concern. The concern was overrunning our hospital systems. So we went into the prevention efforts. You heard it on the news all the time about, you know, flatten the curve, blah, 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 and that kind of stuff. The effort wasn't necessarily to stop people from getting sick. It was to stop too many from getting sick all at once until our hospitals could catch up. We have that same approach in healthcare, or I'm sorry, in EMS. We typically try to work closely with public health for that. So, you know, they're the ones who come up with the new vaccines, the flu shot, that kind of thing. They do a lot with herd immunizations, herd mentality, and trying to keep the masses from getting sick. We work on an individual basis, so we might be able to go out as a preventive effort and do vital sign checks, welfare checks. Some ambulance companies set up immunization, you know, where we can go out and hit everybody with a hepatitis immunization, or I don't know, a Tdap, you know, update the tetanus shots, that kind of thing. A lot of your pharmacists, Walgreens pharmacists, they can give you immunizations. Walmart can do it. So we take part in that, trying to make it where people don't get sick, or at least they don't get sick at a rate that overloads the hospitals. Hospital beds, your level 2 trauma center may only have like 20 hospital beds. So your population of 100,000 people, if more than 20 people run into that ER at the same time, they're maxed. So we do a lot of what we can to stop that from happening. All right, for EMS research, this helps shape EMS. This isn't just for medical protocols. This is also for how we run things. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but when I first became an EMT, you didn't even have to be an EMT to get on an ambulance. You didn't even have to be a first responder. All you had to know how to do was move the ambulance. We had drivers, and I think some places still do have drivers, where that's all you had to do is just have a license. And they put a paramedic in the back, and he was on his own. The ambulance that ran our area when I first became an EMT, that paramedic had any kind of issue where he needed help, one of us was on the truck with him, because his driver was like CPR certified, and that was it. That was all they had. That has since changed. Those districts now require EMT, and the coastal counties, Harrison County in Mississippi, won't even let you work as an EMT anymore. They've stepped it up to where you have to be advanced. So they just have advanced and paramedic. There's a trend that's pushing for that because they like, the paramedic would love to have some help with an IV while he's trying to set an airway on a bad patient, that kind of thing. So having an advanced would help with that. EMS research is helping to lead that. So you might see that become more widespread. It may get to a point where you're still going to have this class, or people after you will still need this class because it's a prereq, but nobody will stop here. Everybody will eventually go to advanced or paramedic or something like that. The role of an EMT in this, you're going to gather the data, right? Because you're the one that runs into the house and sees the patient and everything. You're the one that's going to see if the majority of your geriatric fall patients are falling because they have rugs that are tripping hazards, or all of your patients you go into in the wintertime, it happens to be carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that. You can start to, these research agencies will start to kind of take that and try to build more preventive efforts to say, everybody's getting sick with carbon monoxide poisoning, so let's come up with some ways to stop that from happening. And then your CO calls start to go away. People are always going to get hurt. There's no loss of your job security. It's just a matter of making it to where you can take time to eat lunch, for example, would be kind of nice. Roles and responsibilities of the EMT. Keep the vehicle and equipment ready for an emergency. So your paramedic's not really being a douche when he's telling you to go check out the truck, or check the fluids and that kind of thing. That's technically your role. You are the truck guru when it comes to being on an ambulance. You're going to ensure the safety of yourself, your partner, patients, and bystanders. Be familiar with the emergency vehicle operation, because again, unless it's a basic call that the paramedic doesn't have to do work on, you're going to be the one to drive the truck. The EMT typically drives the truck. Be an on-scene leader. Don't let your paramedic overshadow you. Just because they have more training doesn't mean they have to take charge on every call. If you walk into a house and it's a BLS call, you can take lead. Your paramedic will probably love you for it, and they get to take a break and actually just sit back and watch things, which is pretty nice. Perform your evaluation of the scene. That's mostly your BSI, scene safety. Perform an evaluation of the scene. Call for additional resources as needed. You're going to start to see a lot of this stuff when you go through your assessments. Gain patient access, perform a patient assessment. Give emergency medical care while waiting on additional medical resources. So if you are on a basic truck, you're going to go ahead and give the care that you can while you wait for the paramedics, that kind of thing. Give emotional support. I will tell you this. This used to be the most overlooked role or responsibility of an EMT. When we were going through class, when I was going through class to be an EMT, they didn't care. They wanted, if you were robotic about it or whatever. Now, though, there's an automatic critical failure on your assessments, where if you don't show good patient affect, they'll fail you. So you can't be Dr. House, you won't make it through school. You have to be able to comfort your patient. A lot of times do they still do an emotional support eval? No, it's not its own thing. It's just your evaluator is going to be watching how you interact with the patient. What we want to do, and what our goal is at the boot camps, is that you guys aren't going to be dealing with mannequins when we get to the scenarios. You're going to have somebody actually playing the patient for you to interact with. So we want to see how you do that. How do you comfort your patient? How do you calm them? And how do you handle when they're just being rowdy or being unruly in general, that kind of thing. It's built into all your other assessments. It's not its own thing. And we just need a license in Pro River County and Mississippi. They went back to that. Pearl River County in Mississippi is where the drivers used to be, and I know that AAA got away from it. I didn't know they still did it, or they went back to it. I guess they started running into staffing issues. That sucks. That's going backwards. Anyway, all right. Uphold medical and legal standards, ensure and protect patient privacy. If you're on the side of a football field working on the cheerleader that fell off the top of the pyramid and dislocated her hip, when you go to cut her skirt off, make sure you cover her, because dignity is a very important thing, whether they're awake or not. Obviously, you don't want somebody exposed in front of the crowd. That's what that's about. And then give back to the profession. If you can do something to make this better than it was when you came in, fantastic. It doesn't have to be some big world-changing thing. Just leave it better than you found it, and it will continue to grow. And it will. A lot of the complaints that people have about EMS will hopefully go away because they'll fix those things. Professional attributes. I love that they put integrity first on this because I'm an Air Force guy and I'm a nerd like that. So integrity is huge. You're going into people's homes, people's cars. You know, if it's a trauma call, your clothes are coming off. Not yours. Sorry, that sounded wrong. Your patient's clothes are coming off because you have to see the injury. Integrity is huge. There's a guy that I worked with in the military who would just straight up admit that if he saw something he could swipe in somebody's house, he was going to do it. He actually said it out loud in class. He did not come back to class after that day. But I mean, there are people that are out there like that. So, you know, if you're going into a house for a diabetic emergency and a patient is unconscious, just because you see $50 sitting on the table doesn't mean you can take it. So have that integrity, have that empathy for your patient. You may work 1,000 overdoses that are recreational and bad decision type of overdoses. You're going to come across that one person who overdosed on a medication that they were prescribed because they forgot they took it and then decided to take it again because they were hurting. You don't want to treat that person like a druggie, right? So have some empathy. Self-motivation is big, especially when you're on a truck that doesn't run a lot of calls. Appearance and hygiene should go without saying. You want to, you know, the guy in the picture right here, guys, you don't have to be clean shaven. There's, at least not for EMS. Now, for fire departments, yeah, that's typically a rule because you want to make sure that you get a good seal with your SCBA. But if all you do is an ambulance, a lot of times they don't mind if you have a well-kept beard because you're not going to wear those kind of masks. You're not walking into a smoke environment and so on and so on. You still want to be, you know, good hygiene and appearance, because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not keeping your clothes clean, who's to say that the blood that you got on you that you didn't wash off has hepatitis or something like that? And then be self-confident. Even if you screw up, when you go to boot camp, if you're going to mess up with style. I'll just say that. It's still a learning environment. We'll laugh. You'll laugh. It'll be great. Have fun with it. Just be confident. When you're the one that your patient's looking at because they think they're going to die, they don't want to see you sitting there fidgeting going, I think this is what we need to do. So don't get into that mindset. Time management, communications, teamwork and diplomacy, respect. None of these things really require any expounding, so you guys can see that. Careful delivery of care should actually go without saying. If you do the wrong thing, if you give the wrong med, that's massive. It could kill your patient. It could, you know, you don't want to do that. The best people, there's a saying I heard, paramedics are the best at killing patients. So, you know, EMTs are right there with them. Y'all don't have as many drugs that can do that, but there are ways for EMTs to kill patients. So take your job seriously, learn beyond this program because we're only teaching you the basics. There's a lot out there that you can do that we just don't have time to put into this program. So every patient is entitled to compassion, respect, and the best of care, even if it is the junkie. You know, if you are one of the people that talks crap when you get back to the station, that's fine. Just don't take it out on your patient. EMTs are bound by patient confidentiality. So if you do go talk crap, talk smack at the station, make sure you don't identify the patient or anything else. We can do training based on real life calls, but we can't do training based on real life patients, if that makes sense. I don't want you telling me anybody's real name. You can fudge that stuff and just give me the scenario.
There was actually a surgeon in Bogalusa that got fired because of this right here.
Which,
They were making fun of someone in a surgery, and then three of them took pictures while the person was under anesthesia, and they all lost their job
well,
because it got out that they had done it.
that's good. Good that they
I
lost.
mean, I know it's a surgeon, but you know, it's under confidentiality. So
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Like if you take pictures at a scene, I mentioned it earlier, I wouldn't take pictures with your own phone because it's a great way to lose your phone. Um, if you want to take pictures of a scene, that's fine. Just make sure that there's nothing identifiable in it. No patient, obviously, nothing on the table that can identify the patient, that kind of thing. But one of our other instructors was on a call the other day that looked like a horror movie murder scene on the floor of the living room. And he took some pictures and sent them to me, and that's all it was. It was just the blood on the floor and the broken glass and stuff like that. So that picture was okay to take. If you're on a car scene, like the cars are all mangled up, and you want to take a picture of the car scene, you can do that legally. I still would advise against it because, again, if it goes to court and they want to see as much evidence as possible, they can claim your phone. Just be aware of that. Be familiar with the requirements of the HIPAA. I'm not going to say the health insurance, blah, blah, blah. You should know that one backwards and forwards. It's really not that hard of a law. It's not that big. It basically just says don't gossip. Don't advertise your patient's actual details out to the public, because if you do, it will come back to bite you, and then you will be in the courtroom and you're the target. You don't want to ever be in that position. So that is it for chapter 1. It's 8 o'clock. Take another 10-minute break while I get chapter 2 up, and we will continue on. All right, let's get through chapter 2. Let's see what we got for slides here. God, I can never remember this because it's different for every chapter. 74 slides. We should move pretty quick through this one. All right. So for those of you watching the text, Billy is a graduate from our Ptsd. He's getting ready to finish up his last ride-alongs and take his registry. He's a good guy. Those of you in South Mississippi,
Hey, Robert.
you know, feel free to network with him. He's good people. Anyway, let's get going. Y'all again. Sorry, I have to keep coming out of the slides to do it. I'll say this to help me out, if y'all don't mind. When you come in, it gives you the option to either turn on or off your mic and your webcam. We all make sure that you're muted when you come in. That way I don't have to keep stopping and going back to do it. So we have to take a test for chapter 1 and 2 right after class. Okay, so let me put this in the recording too, actually, because that's a good question. So if you look at your tests in Canvas, you have each individual chapter has a test, and we also have the curriculum schedule that you can get from Canvas. It's in the files. Yes, we have it set to where each chapter's test coincides with the night we do the lecture. However, you don't have to take the class or take the test that night. That's a guide to let you know roundabout when that test should be taken, not necessarily when it's due. If you miss a class, if you're tired, you're dog tired, you don't want to bother with the test tonight, or you want to do some more studying before it, that's fine. Those dates are not set in stone. What is set in stone, and unless we make an exception, like you guys that got slammed by the hurricane, we're going to work with you on this. But your module tests have a deadline. So it's not just a module exam, it's everything in that module up to that exam. So for example, tonight you have chapter 1 and 2. You don't have to take it tonight, but it needs to be done by the time you reach the modules deadline, so that we all start the next module at the same time. We sign in for the Canvas. So if you go back to the ARES EMT webpage where you come into the class, or you can go to the recorded classes, you'll do your attendance and everything. There's a link for Canvas. You should already be enrolled. I sent out the link in everybody's emails, and I also put it on our Facebook group. But to actually get into Canvas, you'll just click that link. When is our next class? That's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays. The next class will be Thursday night. We'll do chapter 3 that night. The deadlines on the modules, we have I can send it, or I'll tell you what I'll do y'all one better. I'll put it in the Facebook group and I'll email it out as well, but you should be able to access it from Canvas. We have some files you can download. We put the class schedule in there so you can see every night we have class, what the lecture will be, what pages you need to read, the test that coincides with it, each module's, all that stuff is in there. So you can see from here to the end of the class what to expect. But like I said, I will also put that in the Facebook group for you guys, and then send it out in emails as well. That way, hopefully everybody gets it. I won't let you log into Canvas. I'll work with you after that one, or after class for that. I won't hold up the class for it, but we'll get you squared away with that. Boot camp is a lot of fun. Canvas files is empty, but the email and Facebook group will be great. All right, yeah, so that's where I'll put it. All right, getting through to the introduction of this one. So this class is all about, or this chapter is all about self-help, stress management, making sure that you take care of yourself, because PTSD is a thing, burnout is a thing, and they're very common. You guys may not necessarily be military, going overseas and fighting in wars and stuff like that. And I'm military myself, even I'm not kicking indoors. It's just, as a medic going over there, I saw a lot of stuff that will probably follow me to my grave. And if you don't take good care of yourself, stuff like that will really bring you down. A word on PTSD, that stuff is not, It's cumulative. It's kind of like hearing loss. You get you do something traumatic, or you see a traumatic event. You're going to see stuff as EMS all the time. It leaves a mark on you, a little scratch, nothing major. You go about your day, you see another call, you get another little scratch. You do this over years and years in your career, you're going to get a lot of scratches, and they really start to build up. So it's really important that we stay resilient. The military harps on resiliency, and they give a lot of little ways to do that. They talk about pillars of resiliency like social life, physical activity, what's the term they use? Spirituality. Not necessarily going to church, but just being part of a group. So like you guys being in this EMT class, one of the reasons I put you into the EMT group is because you're not sitting in a class with each other, right? You can't shoot spitballs at the teacher or throw something, pass notes, all that high school stuff. So you're isolated in this. And when this class gets hard, and it will, there's a lot of information coming at you. You don't have that person sitting next to you. So we put you in the Facebook group. You guys can lean on each other, ask questions, do study groups, make friends. You got people that are you got somebody in the town right next to you that you didn't even know existed. So that's the point of that. That Facebook group is for you guys to kind of help you still band together, even though you're all sitting at home naked in a beanbag chair eating Cheetos. So anyway, we want to focus on our own self-help, because as long as you take care of yourself, you'll be able to take care of your patient. But the minute your world starts to crumble, you really can't do anything for the people you're actually going to try to help, especially when they're in really stressful situations. You walk in and they're screaming, and you're already stressed, you might start screaming with them. So that's no good. Anyway, EMT training includes recognition of hazards. That is not just the hazards on the scene like a down power line. All right, we're talking about each other. Watch each other. Watch your paramedic or your other EMT partner or your EMR or whoever you're with. Make sure that they're taking care of themselves. All right. So some problems can be personal neglect, environmental and human-made threats, mental and physical stress. The environmental and human-made threats goes more into your scene safety, right? If somebody got stabbed, you want to make sure that the assailant's not still on the scene. Personal neglect is very common. We, especially in this field, and those of you guys that are firefighters and in certain firehouse Facebook groups, you see it, and it rears its ugly head. Nobody shows weakness, and everybody's trying to act like they're made out of concrete or Teflon. I don't know, but yeah, it kind of sucks to see that. But that's also therapeutic to some people. So I mean, I get it. I'm never going to come complain about it, but we are very fast to neglect ourselves because we're the helpers, we're the rescue, we're supposed to be the strong people and all that stuff, and that is fine and true, but we're also human. So keep that in mind. EMTs are often called upon to work in circumstances that result in both acute and cumulative stress. Again, like I told you, traumatic stress comes at you, and it's like putting another needle on the haystack every single time. That stack gets pretty heavy after a while. So as an EMT, to take care of yourself, be prepared, anticipate needed resources. Somebody actually, this is a couple minutes ago, but Corey put into the text that CISM will help you. It absolutely will. A lot of us suck at talking to people. So you may not be able to utilize CISM right there when they want you to, but take it seriously. And if you can't talk there, when you're ready, try to talk to somebody, get it out. Even if you just want to go home and vent to your dog. There was a thing on the radio today that talked about if you talk to your pet, obviously they're never going to spill your secret unless somebody speaks dog. But also saying it out loud will help get it off your chest, because you're going to hear yourself say it. And it gives you some clarity as to what's bothering you. A lot of times we internalize everything and we don't quite get it. We're like, I don't know why I'm so down. I don't know why I'm feeling this way and everything. It's because we never actually put it into words. So that's the purpose of CISM. Louisiana has several statewide fire department groups that will travel. The military has it. Other states have it. I know New York's got it. You guys in Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, you may have it as well. There are people that are trained to go around, and they're in your field, so they have an understanding of what you're talking about. You're not going to sit there across the room and be like, you don't understand. They may not have been on the call, but they get it. Anyway, so you're going to try to take care of that. You have to take care of yourself so you can take care of the patient. If you walk into, let me get the slides caught up. All right, so actually, this is into, there we go. All right. So some components of wellness that we're going to be dealing with. And again, I'm going to refer to the military's resiliency training. Hold on a second. Clay, could you hear me before? When did can anybody, all right, so one person, first person to say yes gets it. Everybody else is okay, but can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let me type to them real quick. Okay, resuming. Yeah, I harp on the military's resiliency because it gets beat into me all the time, but it works pretty well and it's simple. It will follow these slides in content, but not necessarily in order. So bear with me on the slides. Components of wellness. So protection from diseases and hazards. You want to make sure you don't catch what your patient's got. Proper nutrition. That is a major obstacle for a lot of people on trucks. You guys that work in major cities, you spend all day either on a call or in a parking lot waiting for a call and that kind of thing. It makes it really hard to get good food. Sufficient exercise is also the same problem. It's kind of hard to go to the gym when you're on duty, right? You guys work at fire departments. Sometimes you have an easier job, and a lot of stations actually have gyms within them, but it can be pretty tough. So do what you can. That may mean getting on the bench in the back of the truck and doing sit-ups. Do some push-ups, simple things, air squats, whatever you can do to move, get the blood flowing. Don't sit there for 12 hours because your feet's going to swell. As we get older, we start to get things like DVTs. We'll learn a little bit about that, but if you guys go to advanced classes, you're going to learn a whole lot about that. And sitting in the ambulance all day long, not doing anything, actually it increases your risk of having a stroke. So try not to get into that mindset. You can tell some people that they do spend all day in the truck. They get out, they kind of start to stretch, their knees hurt, they're getting really heavy and all that, and it's just not good. Refrain from tobacco, drugs, and alcohol. I'm going to put an asterisk on that. Just don't let it get out of control. We're all adults. You don't have to be old enough to drink to take this class, but I think most of us are. If you want to go out for drinks, like I am a social drinker, so I'll go out for drinks with friends, and that actually plays into my social life. So it doesn't get in the way. It's just something I do every now and then when I'm going out with friends to dinner and stuff. That's okay. But you don't want to let it get out of control. Take time to relax. You can do that in the truck. Close your eyes, listen to some meditation music, do some yoga, let your partner pick on you a little bit. It's all good. EMTs are often work in stressful situations. I will say EMTs almost always work in stressful situations. Now, realistically, let's be honest. You're going to get a ton of calls where somebody you're going to look at them and just be like, why did you call 911 because you just didn't know any numbers beyond 3 digits, or what? Because there's a lot of calls that come to you that you're like, you really don't need me. But to them, they needed you. So, keep that in mind. And then their stress becomes your stress. You may look at the call and be like, well, it doesn't look like that bad of an injury to me, but the person's freaking out. Just their response will put a little bit of a stress on you. You're going to leave that call with a higher blood pressure than you got there, even though the call was easy, because the person was freaking out. So again, you as an EMT, try to take control of that situation. Don't let it fester. If they're screaming, do what you can to talk them down. If anybody works in, not even in EMS, but just if you guys are ever in like retail, or God help you if you ever had a job like I did. When I first went to college at 18, I went into the computer industry, and my first computer job was phone tech support for Gateway computers. And I was miserable because all I did was sit at a computer answering calls from people screaming about how their computer was messed up and it was my fault. And I needed to fix it because I was Gateway, and that's as far as they knew. Like that was it. Like they called Gateway, they talked to me, and as far as they were concerned, I owned the company and all the problems. But you know, the calls get much better as you start to bring your calm your patient down. There's a couple of ways to do that. Bringing it back to EMS. First of all, get them to breathe slower. Right, when people freak out, they tend to hyperventilate. Get them to take longer, deeper breaths. That not only calms them down, it also starts to dull pain. It lowers their heart rate, and it really makes pain much more manageable. So that's one thing you can do. If they're irate and screaming at you, a good retail or customer service tactic that I picked up when I was younger than I probably should have been to learn it is lower the volume of your own voice. So don't be submissive to them. I'm not saying that. Don't be like, don't let them walk on you. But what you say to them, say it softer, because they're going to get to a point where they're so busy screaming, they can't hear you anymore. They no longer have any knowledge of what you're saying to be able to continue the argument. They're going to have to be quiet so that they can hear what you're saying and then determine whether or not they want to continue arguing or not. And a lot of times, once they stop yelling, usually they don't start again. And then now you can start to talk in a more calm, more normal manner and get through the call. So regardless of how stressful the situation, you must focus on, in this order, personal safety, right? So when we say BSI scene safety, we talk about your safety first, then the scene, including the safety of others, and then the patient. The patient's already hurt a lot of times. So your priorities are to the people who are not currently hurt. You as a provider, if you get hurt, the patient is technically screwed until somebody else shows up. And then they're probably going to have to work on you first, unless there's a triage reason why they don't. So you really do a disservice to your patient by you getting hurt. I know it sounds kind of selfish to say take care of yourself first, but you got to. Scene safety, including others, because the scene may still be a threat. You might only have one patient at the moment, but if you don't get people away and take care of them, you may have a lot more. Minimize or eliminate stressors. We do have stress in everyday life. Alzheimer's patients are big because they don't always know. Like, it could be the nicest person, but when they have a flare up, it's almost like low blood sugar. Same thing. Nicest people you'll ever meet, but when the sugar gets out of whack, or if an Alzheimer's patient has a flare up, it's a different person. You're talking to a completely different person. But so anyway, you're always going to deal with stress. Stress is unavoidable. The only time you're really not stressed, I will say, is if you're dead. Because I don't know about you guys, but I get overworked sometimes, and even in my dreams, I'm working. Like, I'll have a dream that I'm at work, and I will fight waking up because I'm trying to finish whatever it is I'm doing in my dream before I get up, or else I'm going to wake up stressed because I didn't finish what I started. I'm crazy, I know. I think I definitely could use some therapy, but not all stress is bad. You have some stress that's good, like looking forward to a vacation. The stress of planning the vacation, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a good thing, right? You typically are looking forward to this. So that's stress, but it's not bad. It really gets bad if it just becomes too much. You can get stress overload. If you are having stress between partners, you can try changing partners. I know I had 2 or 3 paramedics through my career with AAA when I worked for them. And it really wasn't because we didn't get along or anything. Mostly for me, it was because I kept moving to they moved me to different towns. But sometimes you may just have a partner you can't get along with, and spending 12 hours in the truck with them might mean murder. So, change partners if you have to. You can change your work hours, change the work environment, cut back on overtime. We have a lot of overtime built in. Sometimes there is a such thing as too much. And even on your paycheck, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, if you work enough overtime, you will lose money because you're going to hit a tax bracket for that particular pay period that winds up taking even more out. You're better off getting a second job and splitting the hours that way. Or, go fishing, sleep, anything like that. Something that you do for you. Change your attitude about the stressor. Sometimes it's just a mindset. what you're stressed out about may not necessarily be a bad thing. It may just be that you're looking at it as a bad thing. Talk about your feelings. We talked about CISM earlier. CISM is Critical Incident Stress Management. There will be some slides on that in this chapter, but just so you know what the acronym is. Or CISDs, that's Critical Incident Stress Debriefings, where that's where you actually sit down and talk about your feelings and what you experienced. I have an example of that, the last CISD that I went through when we get to that slide. Don't obsess over frustrating situations. Let it go. All right. You're going to carry enough baggage with you that you can't help. Try to let go of the things that you can. Try to adopt a relaxed philosophical outlook. I made a joke about Dr. House earlier. The last episode, I think it was, he started having almost like an existential crisis because he was realizing that no matter what he did, no matter how many patients he saved, they were all eventually going to die. Everybody's going to die. I'm at work, but if I miss my, oh, that's all right. So, try not to get bent around the wheel over that. If, yes, we all pass away, you're not making somebody immortal when you save their life. You ultimately are just buying them more time with their loved ones. And that may be a day. They may walk out of the hospital and get run over by somebody texting and driving, the minute but you've got them some more time. That's the goal. Expand your social support system. So we have 45 people in the class tonight. We actually have a lot more students in this class than that. You all are either already in this field or going into this field. So lean on each other, lean on their experiences, lean on their ability to help you digest some things if you're stressed, especially with this class. Like I said, there are going to be some nights where it's just, holy crap, that was a 50-page chapter 2 nights ago, and now we're already moving into the next one. That kind of thing. It can get pretty hectic. If you go on to advanced or especially paramedic, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's hard. Minimize the physical response to stress. So periodic stretching or yoga, if that's your thing. I'm not a big yogi, but I really do feel better after, especially the stretching kind, because I don't do it enough. Slow, deep breathing, regular physical exercise, and that can be anything. That can be cardio, weightlifting, just go for a walk. Meditation, kind of the same thing. You don't have to sit there and like cross your legs and all that stuff. You can, I don't know what kind of outdoor stuff is around you guys, but some people find relaxation. You can just go walking down the sidewalk, just be by yourself and listen to the wind, kind of thing. Limit intake of caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco. Let me ask you this: is caffeine a stimulant or a depressant? Type it. I don't want, there's too many people to say it out loud. Both. Okay, so you're exactly right. Would you like to expound on that?
Are you talking to me?
You said it first, it looks like, but yeah, type in.
You want me to type it in or just say it?
Well, if you're the only one talking, you can go ahead and say it. That's fine. Actually, because the recording doesn't show the chat, so it is both. But why?
Because it depends on it. Like everybody's different. Everybody's body's different. It can act as a stimulant in some people, but a depressant in others.
Okay. Yep. Something else interesting about caffeine is it is a stimulant to a certain point. Once you basically overdose on that point, though, it becomes a depressant. That's why people that drink Monsters all day long and look like they're tired, it's because they got way too much caffeine. They've basically fried out their receptors that respond to it. So you want to, if you get a little bit of caffeine in your energy drink in the morning or your coffee or something like that, that's fine. But if you're down in Cokes and Monster energy drinks every 30 minutes, you're going to be drinking caffeine just trying to stay awake, and it's going to continue to numb you out. So that's an example. So that's why they say avoid it, because a lot of people will try to make their entire day off of I love bangs, but they keep running out of the flavors I like. Yeah, I'm definitely not the person to harp on stuff like that. Like I drink C4 pre-workouts, I drink coffee and all that stuff, but I try to space it. I'm not a Monster person. Monster and Rockstars, I just never got into those. Yeah, oh yeah. My wife gets a little bit of caffeine and she thinks her heart's going to beat out of her ears. I mean, it's crazy. Moving in though, so eat nutritious food, physically prepare your body for stress. Like, going into work that you work in a high stress field, whether or not you're going to get calls that day or not, but what the capabilities are, what might happen. So, get yourself ready for that. Don't go into work thinking, oh my God, I hope I don't get a call today. Because those are going to be the days that you wind up getting it. Like I said, my buddy he's one of our instructors. He's actually one of my paramedic instructors, but the pictures he sent me of the horror movie scene was his first call of the day, and it only went downhill from there. Sometimes you're going to have those days. Let's see. Not seeing uptimes here. I'm not sure what you mean, Kendra. One of those G's I could throw a sewing machine on. Oh, uptime is an energy drink? I've never heard of that. I remember Surge back when I was in high school. Those things. I'm surprised we didn't die, to be honest with you. Anyway, sleep, regular and uninterrupted. That's not always easy to do. Like I said, I have dreams where I'm just as stressed out and worked in my dream as I am awake. So sometimes it gets a little difficult. If you need to do a sleep study or anything like that, try to do some things to help get you ready for bed so you're not going to bed all wound up. Disease prevention, know your family's health history. I have cancer running on both sides of my family. So my outlook is not so great, but I do what I can to minimize my chance of getting it. I work out, I eat healthy and everything. I'll probably still get it, but at least I'm able to pick my kid up. I'm able to run around with my dog, that kind of thing. So it's not bad. Balancing work, family, and health. Rotate your schedule, take time off. If you want to take some time being a night owl, you can. That's, or basically what they're saying is, like, if you always work weekends, try to get it to where sometimes you can take the weekends off. Infectious diseases caused by organisms within the body. They can be communicable, especially if they are obviously a communicable disease. So they can spread from person to person or from one species to another. Have y'all remember the bird flu? The avian flu, as it was called originally, that's something that you could get from birds. Let's see, there's swine flu, which I don't think had anything to do with pigs. Correct me on that one. Yeah, COVID came from bats, supposedly. So, it's not everything is person to person. And a lot of things out there, we don't really know exactly where they came from. We think we know, but some diseases may have come from monkeys, but we don't know. We just know that it was in them just because it started that way. We're not sure if we got it from them or they, chicken or the egg kind of thing. But anyway, not everything comes just from a human. So be careful. If you get bit by an animal, you need to get checked, especially if it's an animal that is known to carry disease, like mosquitoes, bats, apparently. Those kind of things you want to get checked on. So infection risk can be minimized by immunizations, which you guys should. I try to avoid politics. I am a proponent of immunizations, thankfully, because I'm in the military and my immunization list is 2 pages long, which is great because I never got COVID. I don't know which one did it, but everybody around me got sick with COVID, and I'm sitting there like, what's going on? Where's everybody at? Protective techniques: wear your gloves at minimum at all times. We're going to talk about the gown, the goggles, all that stuff to protect you as well. But at a minimum, you should always wear your gloves. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Hand washing is huge. And then, so just kind of moving forward, some terminology: pathogens, contaminations, and exposure. A pathogen is the actual disease. Contamination and exposure, a lot of times people get those mixed up. Exposure just means you were exposed to it. So you're standing at Walmart and the person next to you has COVID. You are exposed to COVID. It does not mean that you're going to catch COVID. It just means that it's been in your presence. And then contamination means you can get it on you, that kind of thing. Some routes include direct contact. So if you get blood on an open wound, indirect contact like needle sticks, airborne transmission. So think TB with that. For a little while there, we thought COVID itself was airborne. Turns out it wasn't. It wound up being droplet. That's why they went from N95 to regular face mask or a cloth, is because when we thought it was airborne, they weren't sure. everybody was like, oh my God, we need N95 masks. And we need the stuff that can block it from just hanging out in the air. Come to find out, it doesn't look like it's airborne. It's mainly just droplet based. So a regular surgical mask or whatever can take care of that. Foodborne transmission. So think like salmonella, vector-borne, fleas, mosquitoes, malaria, that kind of thing would be vector-borne. It's actually spread by an animal or some specific route like that. Just some pictures for your purview. All EMTs are trained in handling bloodborne pathogens. We really harp on it in the boot camp. That's where we start to build your habits. So you're going to hear about it here. You're going to hear about gloves and BSI and safety as we go through it, but that's going to be about it. We don't really talk about it too much in the rest of the chapters, but we do expect you to really build those habits when we do the boot camp. CDC has developed standard precautions like hand hygiene, washing your hands, personal protective equipment, like I said, gloves at a minimum, gown, mask, eye protection, face shield, depending on what you're dealing with. If somebody's projectile vomiting, obviously your gloves are not going to be enough. So keep that in mind. Patient care environment, soiled patient care equipment. Make sure you clean your stuff, your litter, if your paramedic has to put an ET tube down somebody's throat, their laryngoscope needs to be sterilized, all that stuff. Environmental controls, textiles and laundry, needles and other sharps. Needles need to be put away immediately, or at least loudly announced. So like if a paramedic is pushing a needle and he's not near the sharps container, when he sets it down, usually he or she will shout out very loudly, "sharp," so that everybody in the ambulance or everybody around knows that there's a needle there. Somebody should try to take care of that as best you can. They throw hours away after. Yeah. It should be as close to immediate as you can. It's just not always the case. Like if you're between your paramedic and the sharps container, obviously they can't. It's more dangerous for them to try to reach around you with it than it is for them to just set it down and call attention to it, and then you can take care of it. Special circumstances like patient resuscitation and respiratory hygiene, cough etiquette. Patient resuscitation it's messy. You guys have mostly all done CPR in the classroom, and it's all nice and neat. And you got the mannequin in front of you, and no body fluids, and no horrible smells, and blood everywhere, and, things like that. And then you've got you guys that have done actual CPR and seen what the back of the ambulance looks like after that's over with, and it looks like somebody got murdered in the back and there's all kinds of stuff going on. We actually had we had to take an ambulance out of service for about a month because we had a guy that was overinflated gastrically by the BVM because they were doing CPR for too long. And he belched while we were doing compressions. All that air came out, all of his lunch came out, looked like shredded chicken. And the smell was so bad, we actually had to evacuate the ambulance and continue the code outdoors because we were getting sick in that closed space. Hand washing is the simplest yet most effective way to control disease transmission. People don't really do it like they should. Even when they do wash their hands, they don't wash them enough or for long enough. So there's, 30 seconds minimum. You can sing the birthday song, say the ABCs twice, whatever you want to do. But wash your hands before and after patient contact. It protects the patient. It also protects everybody after the patient, even if you wear gloves. Let's see if it talks about. All right. If there's no running water, you can use waterless hand washing substitute. So basically hand sanitizer. Here's the problem with hand sanitizer. It's alcohol based. The way alcohol works, and this is why, fun fact, this is why you get hangovers. Wherever alcohol goes, water will follow. So if you drink alcohol, dehydrate. All of your hydration and everything kind of flows through with the alcohol as you're processing it out. When we're talking about hand sanitizer, any moisture that's on your hand is going to get sucked up by the alcohol as you're rubbing it in. So if there's any bacteria that's on your hand, it dries them out. It kills them, or at least it makes them go dormant. They can't spread. They're too dehydrated. But once they rehydrate, if you get water on your hands, now they're back and active. Because remember, hand sanitizer doesn't get rid of anything. All it's doing is drying out. And a good example of that is you think about when COVID first hit and we're having to hand sanitize all the time, how dry people's hands got from the hand sanitizer. It's It's a good short-term thing, but it's not a substitute for actually washing your hands in running water, because that's when you're actually like flowing everything physically away from you, and it's better. But it'll get you through in a pinch. Wear gloves if there is any possibility for exposure to blood or bodily fluids. We're going to go over how to properly put on gloves in the boot camp. We'll take about 2 minutes to do that. It's not hard. There's a process to it to do it without getting infected, but it's real easy. Vinyl, nitrile, and latex gloves are effective protection, but a lot of people are developing allergies to latex, so you're more likely going to see nitrile gloves out there. Just make sure, and this is kind of something we saw with COVID, make sure you take the gloves off when you're done touching the infected substance. So if I've got 2 patients, I put gloves on to protect myself, I touch patient 1. Should I go directly to patient 2 and touch patient 2 without changing my gloves? Probably not, because if patient 1 had, right, because if patient 1 has something, I just gave it to patient 2. You're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your other patients. So, and not just that, let's say you're wearing gloves, you touch a patient, and then you go digging around in your bag and you didn't take your gloves off. Or like we saw, like I said, with COVID, people riding around with their gloves on. They're touching things in the store, and then they go to their car and they touch their steering wheel and everything, and now they're cross-contaminating. Right, exactly right, Chris. They're cross-contaminating everything. So that, and it's a false sense of security, because the next time they get in their car, they're going to think, well, I haven't gone in the store yet, I'm not going to wear my gloves. They touched their steering wheel, whatever they were worried about getting the other day, now they got it. Some things do live on a cold surface for a long time, like Hep C. Some things don't. All right, HIV tends to die pretty quick, but not everything. Some things will live on a cold surface, like a piece of metal, for days. Eye protection and face shields, you're only really going to need that if you're worried about something getting into your eye. So if a patient's got projectile vomiting, or it's a behavioral patient and they're spitting at you because they don't want you there, that kind of thing, you may want to wear a gown and some eyeglasses. In fact, they're trying to make eyeglasses just as standard as the gloves are, but it's not to the point of you failing a evaluation yet. So if you don't put glasses on, that's okay, but you definitely have to put the gloves on. Gowns are good for childbirth, really, because you want to talk about a murder scene. That's messy. So you're going to want a gown. You'll be completely covered when you start doing those kind of calls. They may not be practical in many situations. You got to match your PPE to what you're dealing with. If somebody's got a stub toe, you don't need a gown and goggles, right? Even if they've got a bleed, you don't need necessarily a gown and goggles. And if they got an arterial bleed and they're like, look, and they hold their hand out and they shoot you with their blood, that's a little different. But a lot of times, just the gloves are all you need. Respirators, the one in the picture is an N95 mask. They are made various ways. That one is designed to stop airborne stuff. Your typical blue hospital mask that you see everybody wearing because of COVID, those are more for droplets. They're not going to stop something that's airborne, but that's okay, because if you're not in an airborne threat, it doesn't matter. A cloth will work, and that's fine. Surgical mask on a patient with communicable disease, be careful about that. A lot of times when we put the mask on the patients, it's either an N95 mask that we're worried about, like TB, for example, or it's a patient that's trying to spit or something like that. We'll pop a surgical mask on, like, oh, spit all you want. You're just gonna spit into your mask and it's gonna be hanging out there. Makes it no longer worth it for them to do it. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation may transmit disease. That's why we try not to do that. We do teach it in CPR, but we don't make people do it. The pocket mask in the picture is a very good substitute, and they make them very small. I actually have one on my keychain it's not designed like that. It's like a rag. It just unfolds and there's a valve on it and I can breathe. So I'm basically going through the motion of mouth to mouth, but I still have a barrier. With an infected patient, you can use a pocket mask, or as an EMT, you should be using a bag valve mask if you've got one. The only time your pocket mask is a backup at this level. Dispose of these devices according to local guidelines. Some are reusable because they come apart. Everything above that valve comes off. But most of the time, nobody really buys those anymore, the reusable ones, because they're not that expensive. Or I'm sorry, the disposable ones are not that expensive. It's safer to get the ones you just toss away. Especially being on a fire department, if we use one, we just steal one from the ambulance. Proper disposal helps avoid HIV and hepatitis. So, like I said, sharps go in the sharps container as fast as possible, safely. Don't recap, break, or bend needles. Dispose of used sharp items in an approved closed container. And I will say this: when we talk about that whole do not recap, break, or bend needles, at your level. All right. There's going to be times where, especially you guys that work in hospitals, you may have to recap a needle. Bending needles, we get taught to do that in the military, especially when we're giving somebody an injection, like say an EpiPen or some kind of I don't know, antitoxin or something like that. Where if we're in a CBRN environment, we need to hit somebody with a vaccine, or not a vaccine, I'm losing my word here. Anyway, sometimes we may have to bend the needle to hook it and keep it on them. Like we'll hook it through the clothing so that they don't lose it. But that's just not a good practice in general. That's why it says don't do it here. All right. So employer responsibilities. You guys are not the only ones responsible for your safety, right? Everybody plays a role. Now, you being that you work in an environment where your employer is expecting you to go into some situations that may or may not be very very safe. Your employer does take some responsibility in making sure that you're okay. So because no guarantee of 100% risk-free environment, your employer is going to have to set up some rules that will make sure that you're safe. For example, infection control. A lot of agencies have an infection control officer who is your go-to person. If you get stuck by a needle, if you get blood on you and you find out that it's an AIDS patient or something like that, and they tell you that you're exposed, this person is going to be the one that helps you with your paperwork, helps you file the claim, get tested, all that stuff. So, but each department kind of runs a little bit different. So it's kind of hard for me to go into details about it, other than just know that your department should have one. Learn how your department handles it. That safety board, that OSHA safety board that every place has got, nobody ever pays attention to it. All of this information is usually on that board. So know your department's infection control plan and follow it, because if you don't, a lot of times you basically inadvertently absolve your organization of taking care of you. If you don't follow the right standard steps, then when it comes down to it later on, they're not liable if you get sick and you didn't follow the right protocols, that kind of thing. So make sure you follow what they've got. Make sure they have something. If you work for a department that doesn't, that's an OSHA requirement. They need to have something in place. Infection control should be a part of your daily routine. Clean the ambulance after each run and on a daily basis. So the first thing you do in the morning when you check off the truck, after you get done checking it off, is sterilize everything. Just in case the shift before you didn't, because people are human and they make mistakes, or they just get lazy, or you never know. I mean, they could have had a call right at the very end and they were, insert reason here. Cleaning should be done at the hospital whenever possible. They use their equipment. You may as well. It doesn't cost you anything to use theirs, and you don't run out of your stuff as fast. All right, immunity. So even if a germ reaches you, you're not necessarily at risk of an infection. If you've got a immunization that keeps you safe from it, typically you're going to be okay. Sometimes immunizations fail, but for the most part, once the antibodies are there, you're usually okay. Immunity is a major factor in determining which hosts become ill from which germs. So the host being you, the person that could get sick. You may be immune or resistant to germs. So the preventative measures, and this is more of a public health thing, but get your immunizations if you can. Some people have gotten where they are I'm going to say anti-vaxxer. I don't mean it as an insult if you are one, but the general consensus is that the immunizations work, even if you're concerned about something that might be in them. If you are exposed to a patient's blood or bodily fluids, turn over patient care to another EMS provider. Clean your exposed area immediately. Rinse your eyes if necessary for 20 minutes. So we're going to use the word copious when we get to, I think this is the toxicology chapter, but you're basically just going to flood your eyes with water for about 20 minutes if you get something in your eyes. Activate your department's infection control plan, which is usually by notifying your infection control officer, and then complete the right reports so that everything is documented. All right, for your scene safety, remember the priorities. It's yourself first, then it's bystanders, then it's your patient. Your patient's already hurt. They're not gonna, if they're in a car accident and they're sitting there on the side of the road, they're not gonna suddenly re-accident themselves. So begin by protecting yourself as soon as possible. Continue to protect yourself on scene. We will give you scenarios where your scene might be safe to get you started, and then we give you something that is no longer, makes your scene no longer safe, and you have to deal with it, because your scenes are fluid. The real world doesn't necessarily always maintain a safe scene. And that's a limitation we've seen in other evaluations. I won't say other schools, but just in the way that evaluators have been doing it over the years, even ourselves. We'll tell you your scene is safe, and then that's it. Scene safety is out of mind, and that's not always the case. We don't want that. We want you to keep scene safety in your mind the whole way through, just like you keep your ABCs in your mind the whole way through. Hazmat. If you see a hazmat scene, if it's something that looks like it might be a hazard, so let's say you roll up on a Walmart truck wreck on the side of the road, and you see the driver laid up laid on the side of the road, maybe 50 yards away from the truck. Looking at that scene, you might determine that it doesn't look like he was ejected. It looks like he got out the truck, walked a little ways, and then passed out. And that should be a screaming red flag that there might be something in the air that you don't want to breathe. That's something that I want you to think about when we're doing your scene size up chapter. It's not just about what you're seeing with the accident. Think about the environmental aspect. Is there a down power line? Is there something in the air? Does it look like it might be a hazmat scene? Because if you roll too close and you breathe it in, you'll go down too. So don't enter unless it's safe to do so. A lot of times you're going to want to call the fire department or the actual hazmat guys. Some areas have their own. Some agencies have their own, like hazmat response teams. Electricity, beyond the scope of EMT training. We don't teach you how to shut down things for electricity. Now, fire service, yeah, actually, you know what? That's a good point. Before we go down to this, let's go back to the Walmart truck. The reason I said that is because for hazmat standards, we're countrywide, you don't have to put a placard on anything unless you're carrying, I think it's 1,000 pounds of said substance. So if they're $9.99 or less, they don't have to put a placard up. So, and it's in pounds, even if it's a liquid, which is weird. That means they have to do the conversion. But I think it's because of the weigh stations only measure in pounds. They really don't care what's in the truck. So like you could have chlorine. Yeah, so of one product. So chlorine. If you have 999.9 pounds of chlorine in the back of your truck, and that's what you're carrying. Plus, you may have bleach. Like Walmart trucks carry all kinds of stuff. So they may have chlorine tablets, bleach, ammonia, 409, freaking pine sol, battery fluid, pesticides, who knows, whatever Walmart carries, all in this truck, and they wreck. All that stuff might mix together, and that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare for people who actually are hazmat techs, because you don't have a clue what you're walking into, and there's really no way to tell until you start digging around and figuring out what might be loose inside the truck. So be careful with those. Walmart trucks to me are the worst. It's not carrying Lysol, not lately. Anyway, moving on to electricity, so I don't keep you guys too late. We're reaching the end of what I like to do the cutoff time at. We don't train you to do anything with electricity as an EMT. Now, you as a firefighter, or you, if you're an electrician by trade, obviously your training goes beyond that, but we just teach you to mark off the danger zone, make sure it's well lit, and keep people away, because we don't want anybody to get shocked. Lightning, it does strike twice. Don't believe the whole lightning doesn't strike twice thing, because it does. And it's actually interesting. We had an ambulance catch on fire because it got struck by lightning once. It struck a tree in front of the station, traveled down the tree, arced across, caught the antenna, and then caught the ambulance on fire. Fire, you guys that are firefighters, you know, you're trained to go into these environments. You guys that are not firefighters, y'all will be just basically hanging out, hanging back.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. A lot of times the smoke will kill you before the flames ever get to you. So these guys in the picture, as you can see, they're wearing equipment, so they're not breathing that smoke. If you don't have it and you don't have the training, don't do it. Vehicle crashes, you're going to see this a lot. And there's a ton of things to watch out for with this. You know, common events, but you have traffic. People aren't going to be watching the road. They're going to be watching your scene, and then they're going to run into you. There's videos of cops getting hit on the side of the road while they're giving tickets. They get clipped by somebody. Hell, they may not even know you're there. You get the rubberneckers, but you also get people who are so absorbed texting on their phones that they don't even realize there's an accident. They just plow right through it. People go through construction zones all the time, not realizing that they're coming up on them. It just happens. So you have the traffic, you have unstable vehicles, especially if there's rollovers, down power lines if they hit a pole, sharp objects. We were doing an extrication class a couple weeks back, and I use old gear for a reason, because I was actually one of the instructors. I wasn't even cutting the car up, and I still managed to slice my gear up. Thankfully, I wasn't using actual, you know, this is my day-to-day, I need to go into a structure fire gear. This was just some old stuff I had. But it happens. So you, as the EMT, don't typically wear turnout gear. So you're very likely to hurt yourself. Just be careful with that.
Have backup gear.
Say what?
Always have backup gear.
Yeah, always have something for you firefighters. You guys that are just on the ambulance, though, you're not really going to get that. All right, PPE, critical to personal safety, and what you get, it just depends on the role you're filling. Like I said, firefighters get turnout gear. Most of your ambulance providers don't, but you do get something. You get highly reflective stuff to help you be seen. You'll get like maybe some slice-proof pants or things like that. Become familiar with various types. Cold weather clothing is big, especially if you're out where I'm at. The military moved me to Niagara Falls, and I just, like I said, I decided to stay because I like it up here. We know I'm from New Orleans. It gets really, really cold here. It gets so cold we have to keep water circulating in our trucks in the wintertime, or the tank will freeze. So anyway, turnout gear. If you're a firefighter, you'll have that. But no matter what role you fill in the EMS, you're going to have some form of PPE that they'll give you. So these are just some examples that you may run into. A lot of this stuff is more for fire departments, but this slide you're going to see kind of regardless. Earplugs, glasses with side shields. Hopefully your earplugs weren't made by 3M on a military contract. Skin protection, so sunblock, especially if you're doing details like you know, town festivals and stuff like that where you're out in the sun all day. And then body armor. I'm seeing, and it's unfortunate, but I am seeing that a lot of departments and places are carrying body armor now because the responders are getting shot at, especially when you're going in on active shooter situations. Let the patient know when you're taking care of critically ill or injured, who you are and what you are doing, even if they're unconscious. They may still be able to hear you if they can't respond. So just like when we do CPR, we make you count out loud to 30. Get in the habit of doing that. Get in the habit of talking to your patient, even if they're unconscious. Say, all right, I'm going to take your blood pressure. It doesn't take any extra effort for you. And if your patient is if they're alert, just unable to respond, it could be from a nerve damage that stops them from having that ability. It helps them out to be able to hear you. You hear about patients in surgery all the time that are aware of what's going on, even though their bodies are still kind of paralyzed out. Let the patient know you are attending to his or her immediate needs. You can get to the paper cuts later. Responses of the critical patient include anxiety, pain, and fear. You see a lot of this in heart patients. Anger and hostility when dealing with death. Depression, dependence, guilt, so on and so on. There's a funny video. Oh, it's old now. It's old years and years, but it was a robot chicken video of a giraffe stuck in quicksand. I'm sure everybody's seen it. I know we show it in our CPR classes, but it's just the stages of dying. It's pretty funny. YouTube it if you want. It's good for a laugh. Communicating with the patient, with the critical patient. Avoid sad and grim comments. All right, so don't be like, "Yeah, man, I think this might be it." Don't do that. Orient the patient. So we're talking about like tell them where they are. They may not know. If they got hit in the head, they may be confused as to where they are, when they are, who they are, all that stuff. So you can reorient them to that stuff. Be honest. If they are in critical condition, don't tell them they're not in critical condition, and vice versa. Deal with possible initial refusal of care. They may tell you they don't, especially, we see this a lot with the elderly because they're worried about losing their independence. They've had it their whole life. They don't want to be put in a nursing home or something like that. So they may have something seriously going on. Say like they tripped and fell and they fractured a hip and they might be bleeding out internally. They're going to tell you, I'm fine. You look, there's no blood. I'm not bleeding. But you as the EMT knows that they could lose enough blood to die from blood loss without ever dropping a single drop on the ground. Different people will refuse for different reasons. Some people will refuse just because they don't want the ambulance bill. Some people will refuse because they feel like they did something wrong, like kids are bad about feeling like they did something wrong, and they're gonna fight you on taking care of them because I don't want my parents to know. I might have been doing something I wasn't supposed to do, and that's how I broke my leg, and I don't want my dad to know. Like he's not gonna find out when you go home with a broken leg. But that's the issue you may deal with. Allow for hope. So here's the thing about that. You can be optimistic. In fact, we want you to be optimistic. Like, I don't know, man, I think you're going to die from this one. I think you shouldn't have handed this beer off. But just don't make it false hope, right? If it's somebody that is like, for example, let's say you've got somebody with late stage cancer and they're going through the last steps of, they're probably going to die in a couple of days. Don't tell them that they're going to just cure up. You might want them to, you might hope for them to, and you can say, I really hope that there's something that can be done. But and you can even say like, we're going to do the best we can. We've seen these injuries before. We're going to do the best we can and try to help you get the best outcome possible. But if you're looking at them and you're like, you're not going to make this, don't tell them the opposite, because in there, especially the family too, be honest, just optimistic. So when you're dealing with children, children can't make their own decisions. So if they're under 18, you need to have mom or dad's approval. There are some exceptions to this, and we'll talk about that when we start talking about emancipated minors in the next chapter, Thursday night. But usually, you need the adult to make decisions, and a lot of times you're going to want the adult to ride with you because they can help comfort the child. Most children have the stranger danger thing down pat, and they don't know you, even though you're trying to help. So having their parent there can help. The parent can answer questions. Like the child most likely doesn't know what they're allergic to, but the mom does or the dad does. Death of a child sucks. This is something that you're definitely going to want to go through a CISD briefing for. And this is actually where I want to talk about that. I told y'all I had a scenario. I'm not going to inundate you with war stories all through this, but this one I want to bring up. Right after I moved to New York, I'd been on this new department. I transferred up. I'd been on this department for just long enough to meet my coworkers. I mean, that was pretty much it. We were still getting to know each other, and we get a call 3 blocks away from the fire department, from our station, for 2 teenage girls that were struck by a vehicle at an intersection, and both of the girls were unresponsive. So we go, and I don't know. I mean, like I said, I know my patients. I know my coworkers' names. That's about it. I don't know their families. I hadn't got that far yet. I've only been there for maybe a week. And we get there, and me and one guy are about to get off the truck. Some of the first arriving truck is already there. They see us get off, and 2 of them just come up and tackle the guy next to me and won't let him go up to the scene. They say, they're telling him, like, get back in the truck. Do not get out of it. And they wouldn't let him get out of the truck, and I had no idea why, but I just go on and start patient care. Come to find out, one of the girls was his daughter. They were crossing the street coming back from the high school. They were on their way to the station, actually. And it was one of those, it's a wide highway. We got 2 lanes going one way, 2 lanes going the other way, and then the turning lane in the middle. Somebody had stopped in the right lane to wait and waved them through, so they started walking. But the person had a green light. The light turned green right when they started to walk. And then a car coming up in the left lane, because they had the green light and they didn't see the kids walking across, just kept going and plowed over both of them at about 50 miles an hour. The daughter didn't make it. The friend did. And that was hard. We had, like I said, I'm just getting to know the guy. And that's basically how we got to know each other, was by sitting next to each other through a CISD. It sucks. And those are the kind of things that you really have to watch your resiliency on, because you will burn out and it's not pretty when it happens. It's tragic. Help the family in any way you can. Prepare the parents. If it's a child that's on death's door and they're about to pass, you may want to get your partner to pull the parents aside and kind of explain to them and let them know, like, hey, we're doing the best we can, but this doesn't look good. That kind of thing. Death can occur quite suddenly or after a prolonged terminal illness. Cancer is a slow, horrible death. Car accident versus tree, it's a little bit quicker and painless. But regardless, you as an EMT, you're going to face it. You're probably going to remember your first death. I remember mine. Stages of grieving. This is the the giraffe does a great job with this. Think of somebody that's just being told they have cancer. First thing is denial. They're like, no, that doesn't happen to me. The doctor's got to be wrong. I need a second opinion, that kind of thing. Then you get the second opinion and you find out that you do have cancer. So anger and hostility, right? You lash out. And then when you're just exhausted from lashing out, then you start to bargain. And people bargain with God, people bargain with their doctors, people bargain with whoever they feel like has control over their situation. Depression sets in when it looks like all else is failing, and then acceptance. The thing about stages of grieving is they don't necessarily happen in order. They don't necessarily have a set amount of time before you have to move on. You may make progress and then regress back. It's just, these are just stages. There is no set order to it. And it's not just about dying either. There's people that have lost long-term relationships or even short relationships that were really intense that will go through these stages. It's just loss in general. So you as an EMT, ask how you can help, reinforce reality. Say, you know what, I'm sorry, it is real, but you're not dead yet, or you're just not dead. It may just be, like I said, if it's a loss, if it's not death, you may like, you know what, yes, this happened, but you're not dead. You still have breath in your lungs. You still have days. What do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with the time you got left? And allow the patient and the family to grieve. It's okay for them to grieve. All right. Stress management. Actually, take a it's 9:12. Y'all okay with an 8-minute break? We'll start right at 20 after. Y'all cool with that? Just so that we can kind of get through it. All right, yeah, 20 after on the dot. That was 8 minutes, and then we'll keep going. Okay, let's continue this. I think we got something like 20 slides left or something, so it should be pretty quick. And then we'll be done for the night. So, stress management on the job. EMS is obviously a high stress job. You got to think about it. Like I said, even if you show up to a scene and it doesn't look that gnarly to you, the fact that somebody thought it was a bad enough emergency for them to call 911, just their general demeanor will still raise your stress. And if you on the calls where you walk in and you're like, what the hell happened here? Those are definitely going to be high stress. So you got to kind of find a way to adapt to that, but not in a way that numbs you out. So it's important to know the causes and how to deal with the stress. Some general adaptation syndrome is something that we're seeing more and more of. So you have your alarm response to stress, right? That's that, oh my God, what's going on? That initial shock. You have reaction and resistance, and recovery or exhaustion. You either come out of it or you get buried. Some ambulance companies have a call volume that's so high that the responders can't get out of it before the next call hits them, and then the next call hits them, and so on and so on. Is that suddenly that haystack, like I was talking about for PTSD and stuff, it really starts to stack up quick. Usually those departments will give you more time off. Like if they know they're running a high call volume and it's always bad stuff, you'll find that those departments typically work schedules where you're off more often than you're on. And the goal is that you have more time to recover, because when you do go to work, you're getting your ass kicked from beginning to end. I know, like there's been ambulance companies I've worked for where we worked 48 hours straight. No big deal. I got plenty of overtime. I spent most of my time in a recliner. It was great. And we've had ambulance companies I've worked for where we worked 8 to 12 hours, and I didn't even. The only time I sat down was when I was moving the ambulance from one spot to another. The rest of the time was spent on a call on my feet. So, it kind of goes with it. And there's a balance to it. Some companies are just tone deaf to their employees. I've seen that where some ambulance companies will work you long hours despite the call volume, and they just work you into the ground. Those aren't the companies you really want to work for. It's an unfortunate truth that they do exist. So, you guys go out there and start looking for places to work. Keep an eye out for that. Your employer may not always have your best interest as their priority. Physiologic signs of stress: increased respirations and heart rate, increased blood pressure, cool, clammy skin, dilated pupils, tensed muscles, increased blood glucose level, perspiration, and decreased blood flow to the GI tract. So what this basically is your fight or flight. We're going to harp on fight or flight. We're going to talk more about it when we talk about the nervous system. We're going to talk about it when we start talking about different medications that we give and what they do. I'm going to talk about, especially like when we go to cardiology, I'm going to talk about meds that you may not yourself give the patient, but you may see the paramedic give it, or they may be prescribed it and they took it, and that's changing how your patient responds and what you're looking at. Like, for example, you see a guy that's short of breath, freaking out. It looks like he's sweating, looks like he just ran a marathon. You're like, what the heck's going on? You check his pulse, and his pulse is sitting at like 55. And it doesn't fit at all with what you're looking at. And it's because of a medication that he's on. And we'll talk more about that when we get into that chapter. But you can also see the same thing in signs of stress. So like if you respond to a stressful event, like a MCI, mass casualty incident, say a bus wreck full of people, or an active shooter event, and people are really stressed for whatever reason is going on in that particular call, and you're trying to get a set of vitals, and we're going to teach you what the normal ranges are for vitals. You check somebody out who's really stressed out and all their vitals are through the roof. One of the things you may want to try to do is calm them down so that you can get a better set of physiologic vitals that are not being strewn out because they're hyped up on adrenaline, that kind of thing. Stressful situations that you may run across, dangerous situations. Like I said, I hate active shooter comes to mind a lot because it's becoming so common. Used to just be shootings. Now somebody's got to go for points, I guess. Physical and psychological demands, critically ill or injured patients, kids. It's not on here, but definitely kids. Dead and dying patients, overpowering sights, smells, and sounds. You'll never forget what flesh smells like when it's on fire, that kind of thing. Multiple patient situations, angry or upset patients, family, or bystanders, and be careful with that. Sometimes you'll show up to a scene where the real threat is the family. Bed bugs. Yeah, no, I agree. Unpredictability and demands of EMS. I thrive on that. I loved it. That's one of the things I hated about being in the computer industry is that it was too monotonous. I couldn't stand it. And it's actually why I don't like, even in a hospital, I love being able to be mobile. I like the unpredictability of the ER, but I didn't like being in the same room all day. So hospital is not really for me. Non-critical, non-911 patients. That is stressful because you're going to feel like you're wasting your time. That's the big thing. You're going to get tired of the patients that call you at 5 o'clock in the morning because they're having extreme pain in their stomach, and you show up expecting like appendicitis or something like that, and you find the person sitting out on their front steps, and they tell you that their stomach ache was actually 3 days ago, and they just wanted to go to the hospital to get checked out. That's happened. Hospital wait times can stress you out, especially when you come in with a critical patient and you're still having to give patient care in the hallway because the hospital is booked up. There's nobody able to take patient report and take the patient off your hands because they're all tied up with other patients. Acute stress reactions occur during a stressful situation. That's the reaction that gets you through, right? Delayed stress reactions manifest after a stressful event, and that starts to lead into like nightmares and stuff like that. You're on the road to PTSD when you're seeing that. Cumulative stress reactions, that basically is PTSD. So prolonged or excessive stress, you just get to a point where you can't wind down anymore. You've been held at this, you're redlining for so long that becomes your baseline. And then when you take vacations, it doesn't do anything. You go out, you can't enjoy things like fishing or yoga or anything like that that's supposed to calm you because you're always stressed out. That has become your normal routine. PTSD, critical incident stress management, which was mentioned earlier in the class, was developed to decrease the likelihood of PTSD. It's working. The hardest part about this is us bullheaded guys, mostly, just don't want to talk about our feelings. We don't want to talk about the fact that we might have actually struggled on that call, because we're supposed to be the strong ones and the ones that can handle everything, especially around our peers, and that's who we're talking to. So it gets hard. I've seen these things work and I've seen them fail miserably, and it really boils down to participation from the responders that are supposed to be in there. They started off, when they first started this program, they were using a bunch of psychiatrists, psychologists, and everybody that really couldn't relate, and so yeah, they got a bad name for a while. But then they figured out, you know what, this isn't the best idea. So they started sending people from the fire department, like for either the ambulance or the fire department, whatever your agency is. They made it to where you went through some additional training for this, so that when you had these meetings, you were actually talking to your coworkers instead of talking to a psych that doesn't know exactly what you're going through. And then now you also have to be careful what you say because of HIPAA and stuff like that. It just wasn't working. So they brought it a little bit more tight knit, made it where it was other responders that had just gone through the training to do these things. And it got much better. Now the biggest hindrance is the actual people who need this meeting have to be able to open up. And sometimes, even if you are an open person, sometimes it's just hard to do that, because you don't want to sit there and cry in front of a bunch of people. Or even worse, you don't know what your reaction is going to be. It may be any of those stages we talked about. It could be anger, you could lash out, not uncontrollably, but some people are like, I don't like people seeing me get my temper up. I don't like people seeing me struggle with things. So I get a little antsy trying to talk to people too. I know better, but it doesn't mean that doesn't make it easy. Some warning signs of stress: irritability toward coworkers, family, and friends, inability to concentrate, difficulty sleeping, increased sleeping, nightmares, feelings of sadness, anxiety, or guilt, indecisiveness. These are all things because they're really basically making you lose your focus. Loss of appetite, loss of interest in sex or sexual activities in general, isolation, loss of interest in work, increased use of alcohol. If you find yourself having to use alcohol to calm down at night, that's a big red flag. Something that I usually do, first of all, I don't like drinking at the house. I have a bottle of Jack, but I don't touch it. Well, I say that. I don't usually touch it. And when I do drink, I usually am only out with friends. If I'm drinking because I'm stressed, that's a big red flag to me. Recreational drug use, take that as you will. That's usually bad in any case because it's illegal, okay? So don't go down that road, at least as an EMT. It will come back to bite you in the ass if you get caught. Physical symptoms such as chronic pain, so chronic headaches, backaches. I don't know if you guys like, if y'all do drink, because like this is one of the things that I've noticed with me. I'll go out one night with friends and I'll have a beer or something like that. And that first beer, I start hurting from head to toe. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I just got hit by a truck. It's because I'm relaxing. I've been tense all day and didn't even realize it. And I'm relaxing and I'm starting to notice how tired my muscles are. That's a sign. And we see the problem with that sign is exactly that. You go through your entire day all tense and you usually don't even realize it. By the time you do actually feel a backache through that, you're pretty far gone as far as your muscle tone and your flexibility, your posture, all that stuff. Feelings of hopelessness is big as well. So because it'll get to the point where it's like, why bother? Or there's no end to this, that kind of thing. Cops. Do we have any cops on? I know we have cops.
Part-time cop.
Say that again.
Part-time too, law enforcement.
You're part-time law enforcement? Okay. So, your job is to track and catch the bad guys. As an example of this, and maybe you can, the reason why I asked is because maybe you can speak to this, is you spend your entire career trying to make the streets better, trying to get rid of the bad guys, but there's always more bad guys. At what point how do you reconcile with that? That's where these feelings of hopelessness come in, right? Because you're gonna question, why are you trying? Why, for every one you pick up, there's another one to replace them. Okay, retired detective. So you see this too, right? Because you're the one that's actually tracking down whoever it is you're trying to track down. What do y'all do for that? What are some things from your side that, and y'all can mic up for this. What are some things that y'all have done to kind of fight that hopelessness feeling?
I know on our end, I do more of the tactical end where I go out and serve warrants, RT teams, and investigate fires. But when we go out and serve a warrant, it seems like, once we serve one, we're serving another one. It's a never-ending deal. For us, we just try to keep the hope that maybe just one day, they're not going to need us. But, I mean, in the reality, at the end of the day, we know that if it's our stacked call, then we're probably going to end up going back out, just the way times are changing now.
Yeah, my hat's off to you, man. It's not a fun time to be a cop right now.
But we have a county rescue task force that they started probably 2 weeks ago, that they got a bunch of us part-time 2 certified for, to go in with the sheriff's office at the countywide team for active shooter situations.
Okay.
So we're dealing with that now more than anything, but they use some of the guys that are medics and EMRs as medics teams.
I got you. Yeah, it just, the problem is that we run into, there's always going to be a bad guy for you guys in law enforcement. There's always going to be somebody getting hurt. Car wrecks won't stop. Bad guys won't stop. It's easy to get lost into that I'm not making a difference thing, right? I mean, I've felt it. That's one of the reasons why this company exists, is because I'm trying to train more people to do what I do, and hopefully you guys can make the difference. But there's always going to be people getting hurt for various reasons. It's important to just keep your world small. You want, for example, you are a cop in Poplarville, Mississippi. You can't stop anything happening in Chicago, but you can make Poplarville safer, right? So the bad guys will always be there, but they don't have to be on your turf. You as an EMT, people are always going to wreck. But you know what? If there's a bad intersection that's always getting a lot of wrecks and stuff, and you're making efforts and talking to people at the town about maybe putting in a new red light or some yield signs or changing the way the road runs or whatever, that's something that you can do, and that would help fight that hopelessness, right? You're not just reacting to everybody getting hurt. If you can find a way to be proactive, sometimes that can help. Personal reactions to difficult situations are difficult to overcome. They really are. We are trained to react. We've built our world. We've built our response habits, and they can be hard to fix. This is normal, but if you typically buckle when you see somebody's crying, for example, or if you see somebody with a broken arm and you fall back from it, I'm not going to say suck it up. That's not what I'm saying. But if you can find ways to overcome that, then work on it. Because again, you may be the one that they're looking to for help, even if you're not on duty. You can be going to pick up dinner one night and see it. Many situations are stressful for everyone involved, even if they're not. If you see it, like if somebody's driving down the road and they see somebody, that's why we put sheets over dead bodies. Because it'll mess people up. People driving down the road and see a dead body, that's stressful for them too. Use extreme care in words and actions. Bring a sense of order and stability to the situation. Chaos is what really sucks the most. A lot of times, even if you can't fix the situation, if you can just get some structure and order to it, that will calm people down. Even if you know that the patient's not going to survive, just showing up and ending that "oh my God" mentality that's going on. A patient's reaction is influenced by many factors. A lot of it is how they, what have they been exposed to before? How have they been taught to handle stress? What's their background? All that stuff plays into it. Allow patients to express fears and concerns. That's okay. Don't make them hold it in. Transport parents with their children if at all possible. Even if you think it might be because we'll get into this, but I'll say it now. Even if you think it might be a child abuse situation, let the parent ride. You're there as a chaperone. They're not going to beat the kid in the back of the ambulance with you sitting there. So it's okay. Let them ride. Just make sure you do your mandatory reporting when you're able. If it is unclear whether a true medical emergency exists, treat it as one. So contact med control. See if they want you to treat and transport. If there's any doubt, go ahead and take them. When we're dealing with violent situations, these can be created in a couple different ways. Civil disturbances where people are just like, it could be husband fighting wife. Large gatherings of potentially hostile people. That's been happening a lot lately, actually. Domestic disputes, crime scenes, any of these can have violent situations. And just because you're there doesn't mean the violence is over. So you really want to, if you're going to a scene in like that, consider for your additional resources getting law enforcement on scene, right? You don't want to go into a potentially dangerous situation without protection. Know who is in command. We're going to talk about that as the class goes on. Because I've seen in my own hometown where the fire chief and the deputy on scene got into it. And the fire chief was demanding that the deputy listen to him because he was IC, and the deputy responded by arresting the fire chief. It just, sometimes that happens. Know who is in command, and really it bases down to the priorities of the scene. Safety first, right? So the fire department's over safety. Let the fire chief or whoever's in charge there make the scene safe. And then we typically hand it off to law enforcement after that because the investigations take longer, but we want to make sure that nobody's going to die in the process. Protect from dangers to provide care. Law enforcement secures the scene before you enter. Or use cover and concealment. There's a difference between the two. If you've ever been through any kind of courses like this, or if you're military, concealment means you're hiding, but you can still be shot. Cover means you took cover behind something that can actually provide you some protection. That's your difference. Call for additional help if needed, and do not disturb crime scene evidence. That's big. We'll talk about that more on another night, but if at all possible, preserve evidence, because that's going to be needed for court, not just for the obvious, law and order stuff, but also for patient care. investigations can really help to narrow down what could be going on with somebody and to get them more definitive care down the road, because their care doesn't stop just when you get them into the ER. Emergencies that do not have a clear physical cause. Cause may turn out to be physical, like hypoglycemia or head trauma. Anytime we have an altered level of consciousness, I always want you guys to think blood sugar immediately. All right. Even if it's a car wreck, if they're out of their head, think blood sugar, because it may be a hypoglycemic emergency that caused them to have the wreck. Behavioral emergencies can result in aberrant behavior. Use caution. The nicest person in the world can turn violent on you if they're having a glucose issue, or if they're drunk, or if they've tried something got into their food or whatever that caused their mind to change. Some workplace issues. Cultural diversity on the job. Each individual is different. So keep in mind, if you work with somebody with a different religious belief than you, let them practice their belief. It's a free country. You don't have to push your religion on them, and you shouldn't expect them to push theirs on you, that kind of thing. And also, you can, like it says, you can use cultural diversity as an asset. You gain a better understanding of people when you talk to them. So like I had a partner that was an Indian, East Indian, and learning from them really made it a lot easier. Or hyper. Just hyper is not usually as fast of an onset as you found out, actually. Anyway, cultural diversity is big. And that understanding actually will help you in your job. You might walk into a Chinese family's house and see all these red whelps all over somebody's back and think immediately that it's abuse. But the Chinese actually have it's a cultural practice for trying to rid the body of disease called coining, where they take hot rolls of coins or little round metal things and they will rub it all over the patient's back, in an attempt to get rid of the disease. And it leaves these, because it's hot metal, it leaves these big marks and all that stuff. So that's an example of something to watch out for. Diversity is an effective way to strengthen the partnership in a public safety workplace. So understand how to communicate effectively, and it's big, right? So keep an open mind. Just because somebody is different doesn't mean that they're wrong. Sexual harassment. This is big. It's not as big as it used to be. Back in the 90s, it was really, really bad. But we've made some pretty good strides about getting away from it. Not to say that it doesn't still happen by any means. So always be on the lookout for this. And I hate to say this, we're bad about it in this field. We really are. I mean, especially in some organizations more than others. I know I see it a lot more on the fire side than I do the EMS. But because people will use dark humor, dirty jokes, and stuff like that as a coping mechanism. And it's not always good, because just because you're not offended by it doesn't mean somebody else isn't. I am sorry to hear that. That's recent. But there's two types. You have quid pro quo. That is basically saying, like, all right, I'm a deputy fire chief in the military. So if I'm talking to a new fire recruit that's a female, and I try to get sexual favors out of her based on my position, that's quid pro quo. Or if I say, you know what, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. That's what that is. And then you have the hostile work environment. This is what you see more common at least in my experience. Jokes, dirty jokes that are at a gender's expense or something like that, not realizing that gender is in the room. And it's really not cool regardless, but especially when you're in mixed company or something like that, because that's offensive, Yeah, I mean, the argument can be made that we're a very easily offended society, but there is still a limit where it's just, all right, maybe that one was in bad taste. At least don't do it here. There's no place for it in the workplace. Report harassment to your supervisor immediately and keep notes. If something was said and you can write down what was said, or who said it, when they said it, all that stuff matters. Also look for people who have obvious trigger warnings. Go further on that one. I'll let you mic up and say what you're talking about there, if you can. If not, that's okay. Oh, that's right. I don't think you can. Yeah, you can just type it. We'll come back to it. I'm going to read this slide or get through this part, and we'll come back to what you're talking about. So, for the moment, substance abuse increases risk on the job. We actually had a an ambulance company near, well, I would just say in the south of Mississippi. I won't get any more specific than that. One of their EMTs just got hemmed up for DUI while driving the ambulance on shift. That stuff happens, you know. So be careful. That's why I'm saying, like, my personal views on alcohol are just my personal views, and that is, as long as you can still function and be, oh, was it? Oof. As long as you can still function and do your job and be an adult when you need to, who cares if you drink if you're old enough? But don't let it interfere with your ability to do that. So if you're drunk on duty driving the ambulance, swerving around and with the patient and the paramedic in the back, that's no bueno, right? So try to avoid that. It's just poor decision making. I mean, doing it in general is poor decision making, and it doesn't help anything after that. Seek help or find a way to confront an addicted coworker. Most of your agencies now have what this last line actually is saying here, that you have employee assistance programs. If you do develop an alcohol dependency or any kind of other drug dependency or something like that, and you seek help for it, a lot of times you don't get punished because you're trying to get help. Even the military has that. We call it ADAPT. If we develop an alcohol, like if I become an alcoholic and I recognize it and I go to seek help, there's no harm, no foul to my career. But if I don't and I do something stupid like drive an ambulance drunk, well, I'm gonna have to take the full consequences for that one. Yeah, don't become the emergency on the way to somebody else's. Suicide prevention. Cumulative stress and acute intense stress can weigh heavily on EMS providers, and like I said, the problem is we tend to internalize all of it. But even if you don't, even if you are good about talking about it, sometimes the stress can just pile up. So keep an eye on yourself, keep an eye on others. If you see somebody starting to show those signs of major stress, you may need to like walk them to some help. Take them not really by the hand, but be like, come on, I'm driving you myself. We're going to the VA or we're going to wherever your organization needs you to go to get them some help, because this suicide is a lot more common than it really used to be, and it's a sad, unfortunate fact. But we got to figure out why and how to get this cut down. There's a hotline for it. You can call if it's you. You can take, if it's a colleague, you can take them somewhere else. Just get help. Don't let it go unnoticed. If you see something, say something. If you or a colleague expresses suicidal ideations, seek professional help. Now, I'll say this. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to put that on recording. Anyway, yeah, be a good battle buddy. And I'll tell you this too. I mean, look at Robin Williams. One of the funniest guys I've ever seen on TV. Always laughing. I mean, he played the genie in Aladdin. That's the kind of Robin Williams I remember. But he committed suicide. He was horribly depressed, and nobody noticed. Nobody took. Granted, none of us that are fans of him are ever going to see that. But he had friends. He had family. I don't know whether or not he was, if people tried to help him or if they didn't know, but I feel like there's a lot of people that would still be here if they had somebody with them at the time. Okay, so stepping back for a second. So when I say people with trigger warnings, we had a coworker who was raped inside the workplace, and she had all the signs, and she spazzed when we had a rape victim case. She told us why after we ran the case. She was also cutting, and we found her track marks. Okay, that's different. I'm not going to read that one out loud. Geez. So yeah, I mean that goes back to that call, like with the dad and his daughter. Our coworkers. I didn't know any better. I didn't know his family, but our coworkers did, and they knew to keep him away so that he didn't see that on the scene. Because God knows what would have happened if he'd have walked up and found his daughter laying bloody in the street. I mean, that's the call that's a nightmare source for me because I have a daughter. Elements of an injury and illness prevention program. So management leadership, right? You need good leadership for this. You don't want somebody who doesn't take this program seriously to be in charge of it. worker participation, hazard identification and assessment, hazard prevention and control, education and training, and program evaluation and improvement. So in the fire service, we have these new positions called health and safety officers. Safety is really everybody's job, but because this is such a big deal in the fire service, we really do. We saw fit to actually make a position and a certification for it. So take it seriously. If your organization doesn't have something like that, you may be the one that needs to bring it up. So, all right, that is it for the class tonight. It's 9:50 for y'all, so we actually clocked in under the 4-hour mark. We usually will get done around 9, but tonight ran long because we had that housekeeping stuff at the beginning. If you forgot what I was talking about with the training sites and everything, we did record it. You can wait until I'm able to get this thing uploaded tomorrow and then go back and watch it again. But remember, I need you guys to remember how to get into everything through ARES. I need you to remember how to sign up for the NREMT. Do that sooner than later. The longer it waits, the more you're likely to forget about it and that kind of thing. And then you Louisiana peeps, make sure you sign up on the portal. And I'm going to have one more step for you guys specifically, but I'm going to send that out to you in an email. I'm not going to inundate the class with that. Okay, let's see. And will it be the same every time? What, the pin? Oh, no, not the pin. I'm sorry. I didn't even say that yet. I haven't given you pin. I got a whole bunch of attendance emails. I don't know why, because I haven't given out the pin number yet. But let's see. Can I do the modules Thursday? Yes, absolutely. So remember, you don't have to take the test the night we go over it. Those are just dates to let you know. And I will be putting up the calendar so you guys know what I'm talking about there. But the important thing is that you finish your modules on time. Other than that, going into the class, getting into Canvas, everything, yes, you're going to use the same process. You're going to go through the ARES website to do it. Don't try to bring a GoToMeeting on its own. Because it doesn't, I don't even know what the numbers are to get you into the class. It's all done automatically through the site. Am I doing a review for tests? No, I will not be. Just personally, I don't have enough time between classes and lecture preps and everything to do it. But that being said, because you have the tests, so you have the lectures, you have the book, you have Master Your Medics and stuff, and then really and truly, these chapter questions are not that hard. I was actually a little disappointed. I was hoping they'd be more reflective of the registry, but they're not. You guys should be fine. There's so many options to keep you up to date. As long as you're keeping up, you should have no problem with the tests. Your pen tonight is going to be the letter B. In fact, I'm going to type this. I'll say it out loud as well, because you recording people are not going to see the text. Unfortunately, the program doesn't record the chat room. But it's the letter B, C, number 1, the letter N, and then number 2. All right, so B is in Bravo, C is in Charlie, the number 1, N is in Nancy, and the number 2. There you go. So what you guys are going to do, go to your attendance page. You're going to fill out everything, and on the pin number, that's what you're going to put, and that's what assigns you to this class, so that if I ever have to run a report and see who attended, I can see who all was there. So you guys on the recording again is the letter B, C, 1, N, 2. Is attendance on their ARES website? Yeah. So the no, it doesn't have to be case sensitive. It's just a text box. As long as I can see the right combination, that'll be fine. Appreciate it, Megan. Let's see. Is attendance on the ARES website? So yes, the attendance form. If you go to aresmedsolutions.com, go to the courses menu, online training, online classroom. That page that comes up will have the attendance form. It'll also have a green button to go into a live classroom. The blue button is for the recordings, and then your Canvas link is there as well. And y'all's recordings, because we do have other classes, y'all's recordings will say B920. All right, that's your class number. B is in basic, because this is an EMT basic class, and then 920 being the month and year that we started this course. That way you don't watch somebody else's class. But that is it. I'll stick around until most everybody's logged off in case anybody has any questions. And I'll see you on Thursday night. If you need anything, you can always reach out to me or hit up the Facebook group.